Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Krista Baker Alexander. Krista Ann Baker was born on November 27, 1983, in Laurel and Jones County, Mississippi, to Pastor Winfred Baker and Patty Ann Baker. She was the youngest of 3 children, with 2 older brothers. When Krista was 8 years old, her family moved to Abota Springs, Louisiana, where they built a church and actively participated in its activities. Growing up, Krista traveled extensively with Christian missionary organizations to help those in need, particularly children. She was homeschooled and later pursued a degree in Christian education through online courses at the North Tennessee Bible Institute. Krista's passion was serving others, especially children, and she hoped to start her own family one day. However, her faith took priority, and she dreamed of finding a husband who shared her values. Krista adhered to traditional values and chose to save herself for marriage, only dating with the intention of finding a lifelong partner. During this time, she developed close friendships, including one with Cootie Alexander, a fellow youth pastor who shared her passion for missionary work. Cootie was a charismatic and well-liked individual in his community. Their families met through the church and maintained a good relationship. Cootie had been friends with Krista for many years before he asked her father, Winfred Baker, for permission to marry her. Her father happily agreed. During their courtship, Cootie and Krista followed church traditions and refrained from intimate contact. Krista had even told her parents that she wanted to save her first kiss with Cootie for their wedding day. While Krista helped her parents at church, Cootie was pursuing a career as a paramedic. A year later, they decided to get married. On March 1, 2008, they exchanged vows in front of their families and church members. The wedding was a joyful celebration, and Krista was a beautiful bride. However, their happiness was short-lived. Just 4 months after the wedding, tragedy struck. On June 29, 2008, Cootie returned home from a night shift at around 6 a.m. to find Krista lying face down on the floor. She was dead. Cootie immediately called the police. Krista's body was found near the front door, with no signs of a struggle. A bullet wound was discovered in the back of her head, with burn marks on her skin, indicating that the shot was fired at close range. The gunshot wound suggested that the gun was positioned at the back of Krista's head when the shot was fired. A 9mm shell casing was found on the floor next to her body. Initially, investigators thought the crime might have been a botched robbery. It was possible that someone broke into the house, assuming it was empty, and then killed Krista to avoid leaving a witness. Police had thoroughly searched the house. A jewelry box was found on the bed, the gun cabinet had been forced open, and Krista's purse was on the kitchen table, showing signs of having been rummaged through. Additionally, many drawers and cabinets were left open, suggesting that the perpetrator was looking for something of value. After completing their search of the house, police began interviewing individuals who had access to the property. Krista's husband, Cootie Alexander, was the first person they spoke with. However, he was too distraught to answer questions immediately, and investigators had to wait for him to compose himself. Once he was able to speak, Cootie reported that everything had seemed normal the previous night before he left for his overnight shift as an emergency medical technician with Cadan ambulance. He told that he called Krista multiple times throughout the night, but she didn't answer her phone. He also sent her several text messages, which she didn't respond to. Assuming she was just tired and had fallen asleep, he didn't think much of it. However, when he returned home the next morning, he was met with a disturbing scene. The front door was slightly open, and upon entering, he found their belongings scattered everywhere and Krista lying on the floor with a fatal gunshot wound to the head. He immediately checked her pulse and confirmed that she was dead. Panicked, he called 911 right away. The investigators were tasked with determining who could have entered the house while he was at work. It was possible that the perpetrator waited until Krista was alone before striking. They also explored the possibility that Krista may have let the killer into the house herself, as there were no signs of a struggle on her body or in the house. This suggested that she may have known her attacker and didn't feel threatened until it was too late. Cootie informed the investigators that a rifle and a shotgun were missing from the gun cabinet. What made the situation even more tragic was that Krista was 17 weeks pregnant, meaning that not only had he lost his wife, but also their unborn child. Cootie was overcome with grief and struggled to come to terms with the loss, unsure of how to move forward with his life. The case involved 2 victims, not one. The crime scene appeared unusual to investigators. The house was messy, but it didn't seem like the result of a typical burglary. Cabinets and drawers were open, but there was no evidence of rummaging or searching for specific items. It was as if the perpetrator wanted to mislead the police. The jewelry box was also open, but the jewelry was still intact, which raised suspicions. Krista's purse was open, yet all its valuable contents remained. The police noted that 2 firearms were missing from the house, but this was unusual because there were more firearms in the house that were not taken. This led investigators to wonder why the perpetrator didn't take all the available firearms. Based on these observations, investigators concluded that the crime scene was staged. It appeared that the perpetrator intended to kill Krista Alexander and then make it look like a robbery. As a result, the police began interviewing their neighbors to gather more information. This led to an unexpected lead in the case. Mavis Rabel, the 69-year-old neighbor and was landlord of the Alexanders, described they as quiet and recently married. They were active members of the Fundamental Baptist Church. Mavis remembered Krista Alexander as a kind and helpful woman who rarely went outside without her husband. Mavis last saw they on Saturday afternoon when Cootie Alexander was collecting the bodies of turtles he had shot in his backyard pond. This led investigators to discover that Cootie owned the gun. However, when police searched the Alexanders' home, they did not find a gun. Cootie claimed that only a rifle and a shotgun had been stolen from the house, but he never mentioned a handgun. Detectives suspected that Cootie might be hiding something. They searched the pond area and found several 9mm shell casings in the grass. These casings were similar to the one found near Krista's body. The police sent the casings to the state crime lab for analysis. The lab report confirmed that the gun Cootie used to shoot the turtles was the same gun used to shoot Krista. Investigators summoned Cootie to the police station for further questioning regarding his wife's death. He maintained that it was impossible for him to have committed the crime. Cootie explained that he had left for work at 5 p.m. on Saturday, June 28, 2008, and returned home the next morning at 6 a.m., providing an alibi that he was working throughout the night. Upon verification, Cootie's colleagues corroborated his claim, stating that he was indeed present at work all night. When inquired about the firearm, Cootie revealed that he owned a gun but claimed to have sold it the day prior to the incident to an unknown man named Steve. The alleged buyer had paid $500 in cash, which made verifying this claim difficult. According to Cootie, Steve was described as a white male in his mid-30s, around 6 feet 1 inch tall, driving an old Toyota pickup truck. Krista's parents shared their concerns with investigators, stating that they didn't believe Cootie's account of events. Her father, Winfred Baker, noted that Cootie showed little emotional response to Krista's death, a behavior that had started a few months before their wedding. They had been experiencing financial difficulties since moving in together, and the impending arrival of their child was likely to add to their struggles. Krista's parents also suspected that Cootie was having an affair with a colleague who had even attended their wedding. Krista had confided in friends just weeks before her death that she suspected Cootie was cheating on her. As investigators dug deeper into the marriage, they became increasingly convinced that Cootie and Krista had different visions for their future. However, Was this enough motive for Cootie to take Krista's life, especially given that she was carrying their unborn child? The police had one lead, a man named Steve, who Cootie claimed had bought the gun used to kill Krista. Investigators set out to find Steve, using the description provided by Cootie. Meanwhile, they brought Cootie in for further questioning, asking him to provide a detailed account of his activities before, during, and after work on the day of Krista's death. This time, his story differed from his initial statement. The investigators found several inconsistencies in Cootie's story. He failed to mention a man named Steve, who was allegedly at his house, and to whom he had sold a gun. Additionally, while on duty, Cootie showed no concern for his pregnant wife Krista's well-being when she didn't answer his calls, despite knowing she was home alone. He could have asked a family member to check on her, but didn't. Furthermore, the crime scene appeared to have been staged, which raised suspicions about Cootie's involvement. As the investigators applied pressure, Cootie's story began to unravel. After several hours of interrogation, he changed his story entirely. He claimed that he had been sleeping on the couch before his night shift and that his wife had woken him up late. He stated that he wasn't angry with her for waking him up late and that it wasn't an issue. Cootie then explained that he had been walking around the house with a gun, intending to take it to work because a colleague was interested in buying it. He said he was fooling around, aiming the gun at objects and making click, click noises. He approached Krista from behind, put the gun to the back of her head, and claimed that an accidental shot occurred. He maintained that it was an accident and that he didn't intend to harm her. When he realized Krista was dead, he was scared and didn't know what to do. Cootie Alexander admitted to staging a crime scene to make it look like a robbery. He took several items from his house, including weapons and a DVD player, and drove to work with the front door left open. His plan was for someone to discover the open door and lights on, and then find his wife, Krista, while he was at work. However, this plan failed. On his way to work, Alexander threw a pistol and other items, including his wife's jewelry, out of the car window. By the time he arrived at work, the only items left in the car were a DVD player and a Sony radio. He gave the DVD player to a colleague, Allison Sharp, with whom he had been having an affair. Alexander and Sharp kissed and held hands before and after his wedding, spending one night at a Baton Rouge hotel. While his wife Krista was at church camp, he took Sharp to a hotel for a jacuzzi evening with fine china plates, meal and wine, amidst supposed financial difficulties with his low salary of $11 per hour and stalled professional certification efforts. County and his pregnant wife, Krista, were struggling financially and unemployed, and on top of that, their washing machine had broken. But Alexander managed to come up with money for a romantic evening at Callaway Inn with his mistress, Sharp. Police later determined that a shocking act unfolded in the home, contradicting Cootie's initial claim that Krista's death was accidental. Detectives found it difficult to prove direct involvement, but believed Cootie's explanation was suspicious. Despite the challenges, police were convinced that Krista's death was not an accident, and Cootie's actions raised more questions than answers. After the police arrested Cootie Alexander, Krista's parents were able to find the strength to forgive him. The Baker family came together to mourn the loss of their beloved daughter and what would have been their fourth grandchild. Krista's father, Winford Baker, remembered her fondly, saying, "She was a sweet and lovely person." Krista had made a significant impact on those around her, having completed 17 mission trips during her lifetime. Winford Baker recalled a conversation he had with Cootie shortly before his arrest. Although it was brief, Baker described the encounter as emotional, saying, "We hugged and cried together." Despite his desire for justice, Baker stated that he had already forgiven Cootie. "We forgave him even before we knew who was responsible," he said. Baker found comfort in knowing that Krista was now in a better place, saying, "She's with the Lord, in heaven, and at peace." The trial started on August 2, 2009. Prosecutors claimed that Cody's behavior after Krista's death implied that he had acted on purpose. They wondered why he didn't call 911 right away if the shooting was truly an accident. Instead, Cody faked a robbery and left Krista's body for 12 hours before going home and calling 911. Prosecutors also questioned Cody's story that the shooting was accidental, noting that he was an experienced gun owner who had received proper training from his father. Cody Alexander, 24, was charged with second-degree murder for the death of his wife, Krista. Cody had admitted to being involved in her death, which he claimed was a result of his poor decision-making. After initially going to trial, Cody suddenly changed his plea to guilty, ending jury deliberations. This unexpected turn of events came about when Krista's family agreed to a plea deal that had been proposed earlier. Alexander was sentenced to 55 years in prison in August 2000. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Crystal Rogers. Crystal Rogers, a devoted 35-year-old mother of 4 from Bardstown, Kentucky, shared custody with her ex-husband Keith despite their separation. They maintained a friendly relationship for their children's sake. Crystal lived 45 miles southeast of Louisville with her current boyfriend, Brooks Holt, and their 2-year-old son. As a responsible and reliable parent, Crystal always responded to her mother Sherry Ballard's calls. However, when Sherry couldn't reach Crystal on July 5, 2015, she grew concerned. It was unusual for Crystal to ignore her mother's calls, and Sherry's worry intensified with each passing hour. After 24 hours of silence, Sherry's maternal instincts told her something was wrong. She tried contacting Crystal multiple times, but her efforts were met with silence. Sherry then reached out to Crystal's friends and family, hoping someone could provide information about her daughter's whereabouts. Crystal's family had not seen or heard from her in a while, which was unusual. Her sister Brooke tried to reach her but couldn't, and her boyfriend Brooks said he hadn't seen her since Friday night, when she was playing games on her phone before he went to bed. When Brooks woke up the next morning, Crystal was gone, and he thought she might have gone to visit her cousin for the 4th of July. However, Crystal's mother Sherry was worried and tried to contact her, but couldn't. She reported Crystal missing to the police, and just then, her son Casey got a call from a friend who had seen Crystal's car on the side of the road. This made Casey and his father Tommy very concerned, as they knew Crystal would never leave her car behind. When they arrived at the location, they found Crystal's car with a flat tire, which only added to their fear that something was seriously wrong. If Crystal had car trouble, she would have contacted someone for help, not tried to fix it herself. The fact that her keys, phone, and purse was still in the car, on the passenger seat, was suspicious. Crystal never went anywhere without these belongings, so their presence added to the concern about her safety. After finding her car on the Bluegrass Parkway, Crystal's father and brother notified the Nelson County Sheriff's Department. Investigators searched the car, but found no signs of a struggle. However, they did notice something unusual. The driver's seat was adjusted for someone taller than Crystal. This raised suspicions that someone else might have been driving her car. The authorities asked for witnesses to come forward, but no one provided any useful information to aid the investigation. The police decided to seek the public's help through the media, releasing Crystal's photo and asking for anyone with information to come forward. Despite their efforts, no significant leads were discovered. Crystal's father, Tommy, took matters into his own hands, organizing search parties to find his daughter. However, the challenging hot and humid weather conditions hindered their searches. Many people helped search for Crystal, but one person who was noticeably absent was her boyfriend, Brooks Holt. The police grew suspicious of Brooks because he seemed unconcerned about Crystal's disappearance, especially since she was the mother of his child. When questioned, Brooks claimed that Crystal and their son had gone with him to his family's farm the night before. Brooks said they returned home around midnight, and he went to bed. He stated that Crystal stayed up late playing games on her phone, as she often did. Brooks claimed that when he woke up at 7 a.m., his son was in bed with him, but Crystal was missing. At first, he thought maybe she had gone out with her cousin. However, those close to Crystal disagreed with Brooks' story. They knew Crystal would never leave her 2-year-old son behind, as they were extremely close. In fact, Crystal's sister, Brooke, believed Crystal was planning to leave Brooks because he had been dishonest with her and showed little emotional attachment. Crystal had told her mother, Cher, that she wanted to end her relationship with Brooks, but she was afraid to do so because he was controlling. Crystal's brother, Casey, had also noticed the tension between them and had seen them arguing several times. The police asked Brooks to come in for questioning and gave him a polygraph test, but the results were inconclusive. After the test, Brooks had a formal interview with the detectives. They had gathered evidence that supported his alibi, including a video that showed his truck entering his family's farm and leaving around midnight. However, because the truck had tinted windows, they couldn't determine who was in the vehicle at the time. Brooks explained that while he was at the farm, he did some chores, set a fire to dispose of building materials, and waited for the fire to die out before driving back home. During the interview, the police asked him about a brief 13-second phone call he made to a business associate, Steve Lawson, on his way back from the farm. To clear up any confusion, Brooks asked Steve Lawson to explain their conversation to the police during the interview and called him. However, the police was skeptical when Steve Lawson claimed he had called Brooks to ask for the phone number of a rental property, as it sounded like a rehearsed alibi. According to Steve Lawson, Brooks told him he needed to wait until he got home to get the number from Crystal, who handled such matters. The police were puzzled by this, questioning why Brooks couldn't simply hand the phone to Crystal, who was with him at the time, and resolve the issue right then. They wondered why Brooks had to wait to talk to her in person. During the interview, Brooks received a call from his brother Nick, a police officer at the Bardstown Police Department, who advised Brooks to leave the interrogation room immediately. The police were skeptical that Crystal had voluntarily abandoned her car on the side of the Bluegrass Parkway. They suspected that something had happened to her while she was at the Brooks HW family farm. As the investigation into her disappearance progressed, several people came forward claiming to have seen Brooks's truck and his brother Nick's police car at the Howe family farm. Detectives became increasingly convinced that the brothers were at the farm, attempting to destroy evidence related to Crystal's disappearance. To obtain more information, the police decided to bring Nick, Brooks's brother, in for questioning. They confronted him with eyewitness accounts that placed him at his family's farm on July 8th, and asked him to provide an explanation for his presence there. Nick claimed to have no idea what the police were referring to, and said he wasn't out that night. But the police didn't believe him. They directly asked Nick if he and his brother had destroyed or hidden evidence related to Crystal's disappearance. Nick firmly denied any wrongdoing and swore that his brother was incapable of harming anyone. The police officer, Nick, was adamant that he would never assist in covering up a crime, including helping Brooks. After the interview, Nick agreed to take a polygraph test, but he failed 2 questions: whether he knew Crystal's current location and if he was withholding information about her disappearance. Despite failing the polygraph, Nick insisted he was telling the truth. On October 15th, the police investigation identified Crystal's boyfriend, Brooks Holt, as the prime suspect in her disappearance. The same day, Nick, Brooks' brother, was fired from the Bardstown Police Department for hindering the investigation. Although the police were confident they knew who was responsible for Crystal's disappearance and death, they lacked sufficient evidence to make an arrest. They were hesitant to take their suspect to court without solid evidence, fearing an acquittal would prevent them from retrying the case due to double jeopardy. In Kentucky, the FBI and local law enforcement joined Crystal's friends, family, and volunteers in an extensive search effort at the 240-acre Ha family farm. Despite daily searches, Crystal's loved ones were left frightened and desperate for any news. The searchers hoped to find Crystal safe and sound, but they also needed answers. At the farm, investigators thoroughly examined the remains of a fire, but they didn't find any human remains. They did discover pieces of clothing in the ashes, but they couldn't link them to Crystal's disappearance. The police issued multiple search warrants for the farm, targeting vehicles and homes. However, these searches didn't produce any significant leads or evidence related to Crystal's case. A $100,000 reward was offered for information about her disappearance, but no one came forward with any information. Tommy Ballard, Crystal's dad, was driven to find his daughter. Her disappearance hit him hard, especially since he'd already gone through a similar tragedy. In 1979, his pregnant sister was brutally murdered by her husband and his friend. They shot her, beat her, and then burned and scattered her remains on a farm. Though it took years, the perpetrators were eventually caught, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison. Despite this painful past, Tommy refused to give up on finding Crystal. He pursued every lead, no matter how small, and explored every avenue. He talked to neighbors, interviewed potential witnesses, and contacted anyone who might have information. To aid his search, Tommy spent his own savings on hiring experts, including cadaver dogs and a private investigator. Tommy Ballard was determined to solve the mystery, so he kept detailed records of every tip he followed and clue he found. He regularly met with the police to share his discoveries and get their input. On an early November morning in 2016, Tommy took his 11-year-old grandson, Crystal's son, on a hunting trip on their property. Tommy's wife, Sherry, watched as they left, feeling a sense of unease. She quickly said a prayer, asking God to watch over them in the woods. Sherry then returned to bed, trying to relax. However, just minutes later, the phone rang, shattering her peace. When she answered, she heard her panicked grandson on the other end. "Papa has been shot," he cried, his voice trembling with fear. Sherry's heart sank, and she was overcome with panic. She rushed to the bathroom, grabbing clothes as she went, while her grandson continued to cry on the phone. Sherry quickly reassured her husband, telling him she was calling 911 as she rapidly got dressed. Her mind was flooded with worries about his condition. When she arrived at the scene, she was met with an overwhelming sense of grief. She rushed to Tommy's side, shaking him vigorously, but her distress turned to horror as she saw blood gushing from his nose. When officers and witnesses arrived, they quickly pulled Sherry away from Tommy so that medical personnel could tend to him. However, Sherry knew her husband was already dead. Tommy Ballard was pronounced dead at the scene, having been shot once in the chest. Initially, the police suggested that Tommy's death was a hunting accident, which outraged Sherry. She was adamant that this was not an accident, but rather a deliberate murder. As the investigation unfolded, authorities ruled out the possibility that Tommy took his own life, finding that his weapon had not been fired. They also cleared Tommy's 11-year-old grandson of any involvement in the shooting. Eventually, the Kentucky State Police announced that they were treating Tommy's death as a murder investigation. The Ballard family believes that Tommy's murder was connected to his investigation into his daughter Crystal's disappearance. They think those responsible for harming Crystal wanted Tommy silenced, fearing he might uncover the truth. In 2022, the FBI led a 5-day investigation into Crystal Rogers' disappearance, returning to the Ha family farm to gather more evidence. Their goal was to collect enough evidence to hold the responsible individual accountable. Although the FBI didn't disclose what they found, a spokesperson confirmed in October 2022 that all evidence collected would be analyzed at the FBI's lab in Quantico as the investigation continued. The Kentucky Attorney General made a key decision, appointing a special prosecutor to help with the prosecution of criminal charges related to the deaths of Crystal Rogers and her father, Tommy Ballard. Crystal's mother, Sherry Ballard, was informed of the appointment and strongly supported it, believing it was necessary to ensure justice for her loved ones. In July 2023, a Kentucky grand jury indicted 32-year-old Joseph Lawson on 2 counts: conspiracy to commit murder and tampering with physical evidence, both related to Crystal's disappearance. 2 months later, Crystal's boyfriend, Brooks Houck, was arrested and charged with murder and tampering with physical evidence. The judge set his bond at $10 million and ordered him to avoid contact with Crystal's family. The people of Bardstown felt a mix of emotions when Brooks Houck was arrested for Crystal's murder. While the news was heartbreaking, bringing home the reality that Crystal was not just missing, but had been killed, many felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that justice would be served. The arrest brought a sense of closure and relief to those affected by Crystal's tragic death. Brooks Houck appeared in court virtually 1 month after his October 2023 arrest. This crucial hearing brought new revelations about another unsolved Bardstown murder. The judge asked prosecutor Shane Young if his team was investigating any other cases connected to Crystal's case. The prosecutor was investigating 2 connected murders: Crystal's murder and the murder of her father, Tommy Ballard. They believed they had the gun used to kill Tommy, which they claimed to have purchased from Nick Houck, who allegedly used a fake name during the sale. Brooks Houck's attorneys requested that the Nelson County judge be disqualified from the case, citing bias and unfair treatment since 2017. They also argued that the $10 million bail was excessive. However, the Kentucky Appeals Court ruled against Houck, upholding the $10 million bond and denying his request to replace the judge. In a separate development, Stephen Lawson was indicted in December 2023 on charges of conspiracy to commit murder and tampering with physical evidence. Notably, Stephen Lawson's son, Joseph Lawson, had been arrested in connection with Crystal's disappearance. Friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Greg Mulvihill. Diana Lovejoy and Greg Mulvihill, both living far from their families, met through an online dating site in 2005. They quickly formed a strong bond, and their relationship soon turned serious. The couple then decided to move in together in San Diego. Diana had always been passionate about athletics and fitness, starting with playing sports in high school and eventually becoming a competitive triathlete. The couple shared a love for the outdoors, which played a significant role in their relationship. During the 2000s, San Diego was emerging as a major tech hub, and Diana and Greg took advantage of the abundant job opportunities. Both Diana and Greg excelled in their careers, with Diana being known for her dependability by her coworkers. After 2 years of dating, they got married in 2007, marking the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. For their honeymoon, they chose Costa Rica, where they attended surf school. Diana and Greg were deeply in love during the early years of their marriage. They shared a passion for life and made the most of every opportunity that came their way, enjoying countless adventures together. After their wedding, they moved to Carlsbad, a picturesque suburb north of San Diego, which offered a perfect blend of natural beauty, outdoor activities, and seclusion. Diana was immediately smitten with the area and felt like she was living her dream when she settled into her ideal home. However, 3 years into their marriage, their relationship started to take a turn. Diana began to experience symptoms that led her to believe she had fibromyalgia, a chronic condition characterized by widespread pain and tenderness in specific areas of the body. Although the exact cause of fibromyalgia remains unknown, several factors are thought to contribute to its development. Diana's fibromyalgia diagnosis significantly impacted her marriage to Greg. Previously an energetic and adventurous person, she struggled to adapt to her new limitations, including reduced stress and rest. This sudden change in lifestyle created challenges for their relationship as a couple. In 2011, Greg took Diana on a relaxing vacation to Santa Cruz, California, to help her cope with her condition. As a caring husband, Greg recognized the toll fibromyalgia was taking on Diana's well-being, including constant muscle pain, fatigue, and limited energy. The illness made it difficult for her to maintain her job, and eventually, Diana had to step away from her career to focus on managing her symptoms. She began spending more time at home in Carlsbad. Above all, Diana's greatest desire was to be a mother, to love and raise a child, to be confident and happy. Diana and Greg had been trying to have a child for years, but unfortunately, Diana suffered multiple miscarriages. These losses took a toll on Diana, affecting her both physically and emotionally. Although she didn't have children, she poured her love into her two beloved cats, Lanny and Turtle. However, her world was turned upside down when Turtle fell ill and eventually passed away. To comfort Diana during this difficult time, Greg surprised her with a new kitten, which she named Taffy. This thoughtful gesture brought Diana immense comfort. In a surprising turn of events, Diana discovered she was pregnant after years of unsuccessful attempts to conceive. Overjoyed, Greg looked forward to becoming a father, while Diana felt her dream of motherhood finally within reach. In September 2012, Diana gave birth to a baby boy, and Greg took time off work to bond with their newborn son. Greg loved being a father and cherished every moment with his son. Diana, on the other hand, was always worried about her son's health and happiness. As time passed, she started to suspect that her son might have a similar condition to her fibromyalgia. However, Greg was convinced that their son was healthy and didn't see any reason to worry. Despite their differing opinions on their son's health, Diana remained convinced that her son was ill. She began researching extensively and discovered a medication called guaifenesin, which was similar to Mucinex and often used to treat chest infections. Some people believed it could also alleviate fibromyalgia symptoms. Diana was determined to give her son high doses of guaifenesin, but Greg strongly opposed the idea, fearing it was unnecessary and could harm their son. This disagreement over their son's health care created growing tension in their marriage. Diana and Greg's marriage became increasingly strained after Greg suffered a shoulder injury that forced him to quit his job. As a result, the household income decreased, and Diana took a sales job to compensate. She also tried to earn extra money by creating online cooking videos, with Greg handling the camera work. However, this venture didn't yield the desired results. Diana also appeared in promotional videos for kitty litter, but this effort also failed to bring in significant revenue. As their financial struggles continued, Diana and Greg's disagreements escalated, particularly regarding their 2-year-old son's health. By this point, they were constantly fighting, and their relationship was in jeopardy. Diana confided in her co-workers that she felt Greg was unhelpful and unsupportive. In July 2014, Greg had a disturbing encounter with a police officer who questioned him about allegations of abuse made by Diana. According to the officer, Diana had filed multiple police reports against Greg, leading to his removal from the family home. Diana and their son were allowed to stay, leaving Greg to face the consequences of the allegations. Diana told a trusted friend that she had been assaulted by Greg while she was sleeping. She took medication that made her drowsy, and when she started to wake up, she realized Greg was touching her inappropriately without her permission. Diana also accused Greg of sexually abusing their son. The authorities, including Child Protective Services, got involved after Diana made these allegations. Greg denied the accusations and claimed that Diana was only making these charges because he disagreed with her about their son's health issues. In response, Greg filed for divorce from Diana and requested custody of their son. Detectives investigated claims that Greg abused Diana and their son, but found no evidence to support these allegations. In fact, psychiatric evaluations of Greg and the boy revealed no signs of abuse. A judge ultimately dropped the case and granted Greg 50-50 custody of their son, much to Diana's dismay. Despite this, Diana remained committed to being a good mother and distancing herself from Greg and the associated drama. As part of their divorce agreement, Diana stayed in the house and agreed to compensate Greg for his share of the property. By 2016, the former couple had managed to establish a relatively peaceful co-parenting arrangement, with each having equal access to their son. However, this fragile peace was shattered on September 1, 2016, when the Carlsbad Police Department received a call from Jason Kovac, a friend of Greg's. Jason called 911 to report that his friend Greg had been shot multiple times and was bleeding severely. A patrol officer from the Carlsbad Police Department responded immediately and found Jason and Greg on the side of the road. Jason told the officer that the shooting had occurred about half a mile away. The officer quickly realized that waiting for an ambulance would put Greg's life at risk, so he decided to drive Greg to the hospital himself. Meanwhile, the SWAT team arrived and began searching the area for the shooter, but they couldn't find anyone. At the hospital, doctors rushed Greg into emergency surgery, where they discovered he had a gunshot wound to his chest. Greg survived the surgery, but he was placed on life support afterwards. While Greg recovered in the hospital, detectives interviewed Jason, who was still shaken by the event. Jason explained that Greg had received a call from a private investigator claiming to have important documents related to his custody and divorce proceedings with Diana. The investigator didn't leave his name, but he gave Greg a specific meeting time and location. Greg was initially hesitant, but his curiosity got the better of him, and he asked Jason to come along for backup. Jason agreed, and they armed themselves with a flashlight and a child's baseball bat. They arrived at the remote location, which was extremely dark due to the new moon. The only light came from a small sliver of the moon. According to Jason, the caller instructed Greg to find a package attached to an electricity pole. When Greg saw the package, he walked towards it with his flashlight, scanning the area. Suddenly, he shouted, "Gun!" and a gunshot rang out. Greg and Jason started running for their lives, with bullets whizzing past their heads. They eventually reached their car, where Jason realized Greg had been shot and called 911. Jason couldn't provide a detailed description of the shooter, but he led the detectives to the exact location of the shooting. During their investigation, they found an intriguing clue near the electricity pole, a neatly folded Angry Birds towel that seemed to be intentionally left there to deceive Greg. Jason reported hearing 6 gunshots, but the investigators found no evidence of shell casings or a weapon. This lack of forensic evidence suggested that the shooter was experienced and knowledgeable about covering their tracks. During their search, the detectives noticed a strong smell of feces in the air, which led them to a pile of feces accompanied by a towel that seemed to have been used for cleanup. The investigators preserved the feces sample and towel as potential evidence, carefully packaging and transporting them to the crime lab for analysis. However, obtaining DNA evidence from the feces sample could take up to a month. In the meantime, the detectives continued their search for a suspect, investigating all available evidence and following up on leads. They focused on Greg's estranged wife, Diana Lovejoy, and questioned her about her possible involvement in the shooting. Diana denied any knowledge and provided an alibi, stating she was at home with her son at the time of the shooting. Greg unexpectedly woke up from life support and began to recover. When he was well enough, he was interviewed by detectives, who asked about his estranged wife's potential involvement. Greg expressed doubt that Diana was capable of such violence, but acknowledged their past conflicts and ongoing divorce and custody battle over their son. The detectives acquired the phone number used to lure Greg to the remote area, which led them to a pay-as-you-go plan and a purchase at Best Buy near Carlsbad. They obtained video footage of the purchase, which showed Diana Lovejoy buying the phone. This solidified her as the prime suspect, and she was arrested during a traffic stop. Diana claimed innocence during her arrest, but when confronted with the evidence, she admitted to buying the phone. She then revealed that she was afraid of Greg, had purchased a gun, and took shooting classes at iron sights, where she met instructor Weldon McDavid, an ex-Marine weapons expert. Diana's friendship with Weldon turned romantic and intimate. She told the detective that they planned to scare her estranged husband Greg to stop his harassment. Weldon told Diana to buy a specific phone, which they used to lure Greg to a remote location. Diana claimed Weldon's role was only to threaten Greg, not to use violence. She drove Weldon to the site and picked him up afterwards. When she heard police sirens, Weldon told her he had to shoot Greg in self-defense because Greg allegedly made aggressive moves towards him. Diana denied involvement in the shooting and said she never asked Greg to take violent action against her. She was charged with conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder. Greg recovered from his gunshot wound and was released from the hospital. However, news of Diana's involvement horrified people. Weldon was tracked down and brought in for questioning. Weldon told the detectives he was at home, 30 minutes away, on the night of the shooting. When asked for a DNA sample, Weldon became nervous. The detectives asked if his DNA would be at the crime scene, and Weldon claimed to remember stopping to use the bathroom on a dirt road the night before. The detectives obtained a search warrant and found a rifle with a live round and 6 spent shell casings in Weldon's garage. The shell casings matched a witness's account of hearing 6 gunshots. Weldon was arrested for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Searching Diana's house, the detectives found a suspicious search history on her computer. She had searched for "new moon," which coincided with the night of the shooting. This was significant because there was minimal ambient light during new moons, making it a suitable time for the murder. The detectives concluded that Diana had premeditated knowledge of the shooting and a motive to kill Greg. She would have had to pay him $120,000 in their divorce settlement, and eliminating him would be easier than paying the debt. Diana Lovejoy and Weldon McDavid's trial began in October 2017. Weldon claimed he never intended to shoot Greg. Weldon claimed his goal was only to scare Greg, but the situation escalated when either Greg or Jason yelled, "I got a gun." Weldon stated that, as a skilled marksman, if he had wanted to kill Greg, he would have been able to do so. However, the prosecution presented a different theory. They argued that Weldon did not shoot and kill Greg because Greg shone a flashlight in Weldon's eyes, disorienting him due to the darkness. Having sat in the dark for an extended period, Weldon's sense of direction was impaired. This ultimately saved Greg's life. The jury found Diana Lovejoy and Weldon McDavid guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder. Upon hearing the verdict, Diana collapsed, although the state believes she was faking it. Weldon was sentenced to 50 years to life, while Diana was sentenced to 26 years to life. Both maintain their innocence. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Katrina Ashley Edlund was born on July 16, 1982, to her mother Vicky. She had 2 siblings, an older brother named Chad and a younger sister named Miranda, who looked up to Katrina as a role model. As children, Miranda would often try on Katrina's clothes and use her makeup, admiring her older sister and wanting to be just like her. As the years passed, Katrina and Miranda formed a strong bond, becoming more like best friends than sisters. Katrina grew up in Musney Park, Illinois, a suburban community outside the city, after her parents separated, and she lived with her mother. Those who knew Katrina described her as a kind, fun-loving person who cherished the holiday season and enjoyed giving humorous gifts to her friends and family. She was deeply involved in her church and had a strong desire to help others, always willing to lend a hand to those in need. Despite her happiness, Katrina longed to find love and thought she had found it when she met Todd Smith at a bar when she was 20 years old. Todd, a self-employed financial planner, had 3 daughters and worked from home. He met Katrina, and despite their differences, they clicked. Todd's flexible schedule allowed them to travel frequently. After 3 years together, Todd proposed to Katrina, and she happily accepted. They planned a small wedding in a local park, and Katrina was thrilled about their future. She loved Todd's daughters and was eager to build a life with him. Katrina's family, including her mother Vicky and siblings Chad and Miranda, adored Todd and thought he was an excellent match for Katrina. They trusted him to take care of her and believed the couple was meant to be. After marrying, Katrina and Todd settled in Masney Park and started their new life together. On October 20th, 2012, Katrina, 30, called her mother and said she was house-sitting for a friend. During their conversation, she mentioned she would visit for dinner on October 24th and had news to share. Vicky suspected that something was amiss, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. Before ending their phone call, Vicky promised Katrina that she would cook her favorite meal, chicken and dumplings. Tragically, Vicky would never get the chance to keep that promise. Days later, Katrina vanished, and Vicky would never lay eyes on her again. On October 23rd, at 5 p.m., Todd, Katrina's husband, called 911 to report her disappearance. He told the dispatcher that Katrina was house-sitting for a friend and that he had been trying to reach her for hours without success. When he drove to the house, he found it empty. Katrina's siblings, Miranda and Chad, were alarmed when they heard the news. Chad, who was undergoing military training in Oklahoma, immediately flew to Illinois to help search for his sister. On the evening of the 23rd, a concerned citizen notified the police about an abandoned vehicle near Rock River. The caller reported that the car was not parked on the road, but rather in an easement, suggesting it had been hastily abandoned. When authorities arrived to investigate, they ran the license plate and identified it as belonging to Katrina Smith. Upon inspecting the vehicle, the officer found no signs of a struggle or any trace of Katrina herself. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was adamant that her daughter's disappearance was a clear indication of foul play when she learned that Katrina's car had been abandoned in an unfamiliar area. It was the only logical explanation to Vicky. If Katrina's car was found in that location, someone must have taken her and left the car there. Following the discovery of her car, Katrina's case was officially categorized as a missing person, and the search efforts intensified significantly. On October 12th, at 11 p.m., the police took Todd Smith in for a formal interview at the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department. During the interview, Todd told the detective that he last saw his wife Katrina on October 10th, not October 22nd. He stated that Katrina had come home briefly to do laundry in preparation for a big job interview the following day. According to Todd, while the laundry was in progress, Katrina left to go to the mall to make a purchase and returned home at 8:30 p.m. Todd reported that Katrina briefly returned home before leaving again to make one last stop. She had told him she needed to complete an errand before returning to the house she was watching for a friend. The next day, after Katrina was declared missing, Todd made an emotional appeal to the media, pleading for her safe return. Overcome with emotion, he broke down in tears as he begged for anyone with information about her whereabouts to come forward. As the search for Katrina continued, search teams composed of officers and volunteers worked tirelessly to find her. They focused their efforts on a nearby park, where Katrina's car had been abandoned, hoping to find evidence or clues about her disappearance. When Katrina's brother Chad arrived in Illinois from his army training in Oklahoma, he joined the search for his missing sister at the park. With his military background, Chad took charge of the search party. He created a map, divided the volunteers into teams, and coordinated their efforts to ensure a thorough search. As the search continued, the officers employed a methodical approach, using dogs and walking in straight lines to cover as much ground as possible and detect any potential evidence, no matter how small. Meanwhile, Katrina's mother Vicky focused on spreading awareness about her daughter's disappearance. She posted missing person flyers at gas stations, convenience stores, and lampposts throughout the town, hoping to reach as many people as possible. Despite her overwhelming grief and fear of finding her daughter's body, Vicky was determined to keep searching for Katrina, even if she couldn't participate in the physical search herself. Todd, Katrina's husband, was overcome with emotion during this difficult time. Chad, trying to be supportive, urged Todd to stay strong and focused on finding Katrina. He stood by Todd's side, sympathetic to his brother-in-law's grief. Meanwhile, the police investigation turned up some disturbing clues. An officer found Katrina's purse near her abandoned car, and as he searched further down the road, he discovered more of her belongings, including her cell phone and bloody towels. It was clear that someone had deliberately discarded Katrina's possessions as they drove away from her car. Unfortunately, the police still had no idea where Katrina was, but they feared the worst. The recovered items were sent to the crime lab for analysis, and the police awaited the results with bated breath. As the police searched for clues, they explored every aspect of Katrina's personal life to understand what might have led to her disappearance. They wanted to know if she had any relationships outside her marriage, was involved in gambling or drugs, and what her daily routines were like. To gather this information, they interviewed her friends and family. Everyone they spoke to described Katrina as a kind, responsible person who always put her duties first and avoided anything risky. Her loved ones said she was dedicated to her job and had a strong work ethic. They also reported that she never showed any signs of addiction or irresponsible behavior. The people who knew Katrina described her as a loyal partner and a hard worker who always did the right thing. During the investigation into her disappearance, a woman came forward with an interesting clue. She claimed to have seen a blue car, similar to Katrina's, parked on a bridge over Rock River on the night she vanished. The trunk was open, and someone was kneeling behind it. Although the witness couldn't describe the person's gender or race, her tip led the police to suspect that Katrina might have been a victim of foul play and ended up in the river. However, they still needed concrete evidence to support this theory. The police continued to investigate Katrina's disappearance, looking into potential motives and suspects. Despite seeming to have a happy marriage, her husband Todd was still a person of interest. As the authorities knew that hidden conflicts or secrets can exist in any relationship, their inquiry led them to a teenager in town who had previously shown an unhealthy obsession with Katrina. Earlier in the year, Katrina had confided in friends about the boy's behavior, including allegations of voyeurism, such as spying on her through her bedroom window. This had made Katrina increasingly anxious at the time. Although the boy's activities had stopped when he left for college, the police wondered if he might have returned and resumed stalking Katrina. They devoted significant resources to finding him. 3 days into the search, crucial clues were discovered on Katrina's cell phone, which was being examined at the crime lab. The phone proved to be a crucial source of evidence for the investigators. By examining Katrina's cell phone records, they uncovered a wealth of information, including her text messages, call logs, pictures, videos, and GPS location data. This information enabled the police to reconstruct a more accurate timeline of Katrina's activities. The investigation revealed that Katrina was having an affair with a co-worker, Guy Gabriel. Initially, they had met after work and developed a connection that eventually turned romantic. However, a background check on Guy Gabriel exposed a troubling history of domestic violence. Additionally, the detectives found text messages in which Guy Gabriel demanded that Katrina leave her husband Todd for him. Given Guy Gabriel's violent past and his messages to Katrina, he became the top suspect in her disappearance. The police suspected that Guy Gabriel might have reacted violently towards Katrina because she refused to leave her husband for him. When Katrina's family discovered her affair with Guy, they were shocked and disbelieving. The seemingly perfect couple, Katrina and Todd, had hidden a dark secret. The news of Katrina's infidelity devastated Todd, who was unaware of the affair until the police investigation. Guy Gabriel was questioned by the police at the station, and although he appeared nervous, he admitted to the affair, but denied any involvement in Katrina's disappearance. He claimed to have been at work on the night she went missing. During the investigation, the police uncovered an incident that had occurred 2 weeks before Katrina's disappearance. Witnesses reported that a black Volkswagen Jetta had sped through the parking lot of the auto shop where Katrina and Guy worked, causing a scene during lunchtime. A mysterious driver in a VW Jetta threw a stack of flyers out of the car's sunroof, scattering them among the employees gathered outside. The flyers contained a derogatory remark about Katrina and Guy Gabriel's relationship, but the identity of the driver remained unknown. Meanwhile, the police questioned Katrina's hairstylist, who shared that Katrina had confided in her about feeling unsafe and threatened. Katrina had even considered buying a gun for protection and had become paranoid about being followed. She had gone so far as to take her phone to a store to check for a tracking device, suspecting that someone was monitoring her movements. At the police garage, crime scene investigators searched Katrina's car for clues and used a special chemical called luminol to detect blood. They found a large amount of blood in the trunk. Meanwhile, a firefighter pulled a mysterious object from the water, which turned out to be a severely decomposed female body. The body was difficult to identify due to its condition. At the medical examiner's office, dental experts compared the body's teeth to Katrina Smith's dental records and confirmed that the body belonged to her. The autopsy revealed that Katrina's cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. Katrina's family was devastated by the news, and her mother, Vicky, was in disbelief. The police cleared the teenage boy who had been allegedly stalking Katrina as a suspect after verifying his alibi. The police then turned their attention to Guy Gabriel, Katrina's boyfriend outside of her marriage. Guy provided an alibi, claiming he was at work during the time of Katrina's disappearance and murder. His managers and co-workers corroborated his alibi, and the police cleared him as a suspect. Although Guy was no longer a suspect, the police asked for his perspective on who may have hurt Katrina. Guy revealed that Katrina's husband, Todd, exhibited controlling behavior and encouraged Katrina to leave her marriage. The police investigated Katrina's marriage and discovered several concerning details, including Katrina's desire to divorce Todd, her meeting with a divorce attorney, and her separation from Todd. The police suspected Todd of being behind the mysterious flyer incident at Katrina's workplace. Their suspicion grew stronger when they discovered that Todd had test-driven a black Jetta, similar to the car involved in the flyer incident, around the same time it occurred. When the police informed Katrina's family that Todd was the prime suspect in her murder and was already in custody, they were shocked and devastated. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was particularly affected, feeling physically ill at the thought that Todd could be responsible for her daughter's murder. The police also discovered that Todd's financial investment company was facing legal troubles, providing a potential motive for the crime. Katrina was the sole breadwinner for her family since Todd was unemployed. The police suspected that Todd might have motive to kill his wife, as he would gain access to their funds if she left him and their daughters. To gather evidence, the police obtained a search warrant for the couple's home. During the search, they found a baseball bat in the garage with brays of blood on it, which led them to believe it might be the murder weapon. The autopsy revealed that Katrina's injuries were consistent with blunt force trauma, suggesting a bat was used. A DNA test confirmed that the blood on the bat was Katrina's, linking the bat to the crime. The police also found a clean area under the car, which seemed suspicious. Further examination revealed that the bloodstains matched Katrina's DNA profile. 30 days after Katrina's murder, Todd was arrested and charged with her killing, bringing relief to her family. At his trial, the prosecution presented evidence that Katrina had recently visited a divorce attorney, indicating marital problems. On the night of the murder, Katrina had gone to Todd's house to do laundry for a job interview the next morning. The prosecution alleged that Katrina told Todd their marriage was over, triggering his violent reaction. They claimed that Todd grabbed a baseball bat, killed Katrina in the garage, and then disposed of her body by throwing it off a bridge at Rock River. The jury found Todd guilty and sentenced him to 55 years in prison. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sherry Papini. Keith and Sherry Papini first met in middle school when Keith was in 7th grade and Sherry was in 8th. They shared their first kiss with each other. Their friendship flourished quickly and they remained close throughout their teenage years. However, as they grew older, they drifted apart and went their separate ways. Years later, Sherry married another man in 2006, but the marriage was short-lived, lasting only 2 years. After her divorce, Sherry found herself single again. Then, by chance, she ran into Keith, and the spark between them was immediately rekindled. The time they had spent apart had given them both personal growth and maturity, and they realized how much they had missed each other. Keith and Sherry decided to give their love a second chance, and they started dating. As they spent more time together, their connection grew stronger every day. Within a year of reuniting, they knew they were meant to be together. They got married in 2009 and had 2 children, settling down in Redding, California. Sherry used to work in telecommunications, but after having children, she became a stay-at-home mom. Keith continued to work at Best Buy as a member of the Geek Squad. The Papini family seemed to have a perfect life from the outside. However, on November 2nd, 2016, Keith's world was turned upside down when he came home to find his wife, Sherry, missing. It was unusual for her not to be there, as she was always home when he returned from work. At first, Keith thought she might have gone for a walk, but as time passed and she didn't come back, he grew increasingly worried. Keith called the daycare center their children attended to see if Sherry had picked them up. But the school secretary told him she hadn't. This heightened Keith's concern, and he decided to use the Find My iPhone app on his phone to track her location. The app showed that her phone was at the end of their driveway. Alarmed, Keith rushed outside to search the area and found Sherry's phone lying on the ground, with her headphones nearby. When Keith found Sherry's phone and headphones at the end of the driveway, he made a disturbing discovery. There were strands of hair entangled in the headphones. He immediately contacted the authorities at the Shasta County Sheriff's Office, who took Sherry's disappearance seriously and brought in the FBI right from the start. Keith was desperate to find Sherry and get her back safely. To do this, he knew it was crucial to get her name and face out to the public. So he spoke to the media, hoping to generate support and assistance in finding her. The media played a huge role in spreading the story of Sherry's disappearance, and her beauty, blonde hair, and blue eyes made her case especially captivating to the public. As a result, news channels eagerly covered every detail of the story. After Sherry went missing and it became public, the police received many tips, but none of them led to finding her. As they continued to investigate, they looked at Sherry's phone for clues. They found a heated text conversation between Sherry and her husband Keith from a few months earlier, which made the police suspicious of Keith's possible involvement. Despite this, Keith was cooperative and offered to take a lie detector test to clear his name. He passed the test. In addition to the argument with Keith, the police found texts on Sherry's phone from men using fake female names. It seemed like Sherry was planning to leave Keith. On November 10th, 2016, the police tracked down one of these men and questioned him about Sherry's disappearance. The man claimed to have met Sherry 5 years prior at a restaurant during a work conference she was attending. Although he said he didn't know her current whereabouts, he shared some information about her relationship with her husband Keith. According to the man, Sherry did not respect Keith and was even fearful of him. He alleged that Keith was violent and abusive, often locking Sherry up in their home. After a tip from a man who knew Sherry, claiming that her husband Keith was abusive, the police launched an investigation. However, After speaking with friends and neighbors, they found no evidence to support the claims of Keith's violence. Several days into Sherry's disappearance, on November 24, 2016, the police received a call at 4:32 a.m. on Thanksgiving morning. The caller reported a woman in distress on the side of I-5. The police rushed to the scene and found a woman bound with chains and zip ties. It took a moment for the officers to realize Sherry Papini, who had been missing for days. Relieved to find her alive, they carefully freed her from the restraints and took her to the hospital for medical attention. When Sherry arrived at the hospital, it was clear that she had been through a traumatic experience. Her body was covered in bruises, her hair was noticeably shorter, and she had a burn mark on her arm, as well as a bad rash. She had also lost a significant amount of weight, weighing in at only 87 pounds. While Sherry was recovering at Woodland Memorial Hospital, the police tried to interview her, but she was too emotional to provide any information. The only condition under which she would cooperate was if her husband, Keith, was present in the room. With Keith by her side, Sherry recounted the terrifying incident. She said she was out jogging when a dark-colored SUV, driven by two women, approached her. She got out of the vehicle, pointed a gun at her, while Sherry Papini stayed in the car. Sherry was forced into the back of the SUV against her will. Before getting into the vehicle, Sherry had the presence of mind to leave behind her phone and headphones on the driveway, along with some strands of her hair. She did this intentionally, hoping that Keith would find them and realize something was wrong. Sherry shared the details of her abduction with the police and her husband Keith. During the journey, she kept dozing off in the back of the SUV, making it difficult for her to keep track of time. The two women had wrapped something around her face, preventing her from seeing her surroundings. They told her that she was being kidnapped because a man wanted to buy her and she was being taken to meet him. However, they refused to reveal the man's identity or location. Sherry was terrified and worried about her fate, unsure of where she was being taken or what would happen to her during her captivity. She also claimed to have been physically abused by one of the women, who frequently hit her, leaving her with multiple injuries. Sherry claimed that her captors branded her right shoulder with the word Exodus to attract a buyer, who was allegedly a police officer. She also said that her captors constantly played mariachi music, which she found disorienting and unsettling. This music added to the oppressive atmosphere of her captivity, making her feel more isolated. Sherry was held in a single room with a boarded-up window. She was chained in a closet that served as a bathroom with a bucket for sanitation purposes. About 3 weeks into her captivity, Sherry heard a gunshot. After that, she had been with her disappeared, leaving Sherry to wonder if she had been killed. Sherry Papini, who had been quiet until now, took control of the situation. She instructed Sherry to get into a car, and they drove along I-5. Without warning, the car stopped, leaving Sherry startled and disoriented. She looked around, trying to understand what was happening. The younger woman then told Sherry to get out of the car. Confused and unsure, Sherry cautiously did as she was told. As Sherry exited the car, she felt a mix of fear and excitement. Was this her chance to escape? Or was she being led into an even more dangerous situation? She was left with more questions than answers, feeling uncertain and scared. After being found safe on the side of I-5, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office held a press conference to announce Sherry's return. During the conference, the police reported that Sherry had been abducted by 2 Hispanic women, which sparked widespread concern among the public. However, this news brought unintended consequences. Following the press conference, a wave of racism erupted, targeting individuals of Spanish descent. The reporting of Sherry's abduction had fueled public fear and anxiety, leading some to unfairly blame individuals associated with the Hispanic community. After being abducted, Sherry returned home and began attending therapy sessions to cope with her trauma. As a California resident, she was eligible for the Victims' Compensation Fund, which uses public funds to help pay for victims' therapy. In the aftermath, she became withdrawn, spending more time at home and avoiding social outings. 1 year into the investigation, police released a composite sketch of 2 Hispanic women believed to be involved in the crime. Despite this development, no new leads emerged. The police also revealed that they had found male DNA on Sherry's underwear, which did not match her husband Keith's DNA. 2 years passed with no matches on the male DNA, and the case remained unsolved. However, in 2020, a long-awaited breakthrough finally occurred. The police working on Sherry's case decided to try a new approach to find the owner of the unknown DNA. They used a technique called familial DNA, which compares the DNA profile to potential relatives of the donor. This method is commonly used in criminal investigations to analyze DNA evidence and identify possible family members of a suspect. By looking at specific genetic traits shared among family members, investigators can create a shorter list of potential suspects and explore possible family connections. In the Sherry Papini case, the police were surprised to discover that the DNA found in her underwear matched a close relative of James Ray's, her ex-boyfriend. This new information raised many questions and became a crucial moment in the investigation. The police suspected Sherry's ex-boyfriend, James Ray's, of being involved in her abduction. To investigate, they collected a soda bottle from his trash in June 2020 and sent it to a forensic lab for DNA testing. A month later, the lab results showed a match between James's DNA and the DNA found on Sherry's underwear the day she was discovered. With this new evidence, the police went to James's home in Costa Mesa, California, where he worked at a sports shop, to ask him about Sherry's case. James told the police that he had dated Sherry about 10 years prior, and the last time he saw her was a year after they broke up. He claimed to have only heard about her disappearance and safe return through rumors. During the police interview, James initially denied any involvement in Sherry's kidnapping. However, as the conversation progressed, he revealed that he was still close friends with Sherry despite their breakup 10 years prior. Although James admitted to playing a role in her disappearance, he claimed he didn't kidnap her. Instead, he insisted he was merely assisting a friend in need. James reported to the police that Sherry reached out to him for help, claiming she needed to escape her abusive husband, Keith. On November 2, 2016, James told police that a friend had lent him a car, which he used the next day to pick up Sherry. According to James, Sherry hid in the back seat of the car, lying down during the drive to Costa Mesa. During her stay at James's house, Sherry mostly stayed in her room, only coming out to help with chores like cleaning and cooking. She even boarded up the bedroom window, as she wanted to feel secure with the door closed. James noticed that Sherry was intentionally trying to lose weight by barely eating. Sherry asked James to help her harm herself, including hitting herself to create bruises. James was uncomfortable with this request, but he still agreed to help her, even going so far as to shoot a hockey puck off her knee at her request. Despite his reservations, James participated in these harmful activities with Sherry. James confessed to branding Sherry with the word Exodus on her right shoulder using a wood-burning tool they had bought from Hobby Lobby. Before Sherry left his house, she asked James to get chains and zip ties, which he used to bind her securely before driving her to Redding, California. During the drive, Sherry told James to stop the car, which he did, and she escaped. When questioned by the police, James denied knowing anything about the 2 Hispanic women Sherry claimed had abducted her. However, when the police searched James's house, they were shocked to find that several rooms matched the descriptions Sherry had given of the place where she was held captive. Specifically, James' bedroom and closet exactly matched a drawing Sherry had made for the police, detailing the layout of the rooms she had been confined to. The police discovered a striking similarity between a table at James's house and the one Sherry described in her initial interviews. They decided to bring Sherry and Keith in for another interview at the police station. The police had accumulated substantial evidence, that led them to believe Sherry had faked her own abduction. They intended to confront her with their findings during the interview. Before revealing the truth, they asked Sherry if she wanted Keith to leave the room. Sherry remained silent. The police then decided to leave the couple alone for a few minutes. During this time, Sherry approached Keith and confessed that she didn't want the police to find the Hispanic woman who had supposedly abducted her. She felt indebted to this woman for sparing her life. Sherry refused to press charges against the woman who attacked her. Keith listened to her reasons, but he was skeptical and worried. Sherry's explanation didn't make sense to him, and he was starting to get scared. He pointed out that even if Sherry didn't want to press charges, the attacker would still face consequences for her actions. The police re-entered the interview room with an update. They had found a familial DNA match for the male DNA on Sherry's clothing, and it led them to James Reyes, Sherry's ex-boyfriend. When Keith heard the name, he had a visceral reaction. He knew James as Sherry's ex. The police told Sherry and Keith that James Reyes, Sherry's ex-boyfriend, had passed a lie detector test. They suspected that Sherry had faked her own kidnapping and claimed to have evidence to support James's version of events. The police told Sherry that they believed her significant weight loss during her disappearance was intentional, as she had chosen to eat very little. They also suggested that the rash on her arm was caused by the cleaning products she had used at James's house. Furthermore, the police alleged that James had used a wooden tool bought from Hobby Lobby to brand Sherry. They also claimed that Sherry's broken nose was self-inflicted, caused by hitting herself with a hockey stick. Despite the mounting evidence against her, Sherry remained calm and pretended not to understand what the police were talking about. Sherry Papini claimed to have not seen her ex-boyfriend James in years, stating she last saw him at his brother's funeral in Southern California. However, the police knew she was lying because James had provided them with information about her disappearance that only someone close to her would know. On March 3, 2022, the FBI arrested Sherry on charges of lying to federal agents and faking her own abduction. 6 weeks later, she agreed to a plea deal, admitting to orchestrating her kidnapping. Sherry's lawyers requested a sentence of 1 month in prison, followed by 7 months of house arrest. However, the prosecution recommended an 18-month sentence. In September 2022, the judge sentenced Sherry to 18 months in prison and ordered her to pay a $300,000 fine. The judge doubted that Sherry would ever be able to pay the fine, saying it would take winning the lottery. During the sentencing, the judge called Sherry a manipulator and habitual liar, stating that he had no doubt she would have continued lying if she hadn't been caught. The judge told Sherry that she needed to be punished to stop others from committing similar crimes. Sherry had taken advantage of many resources, including money meant for victims, Social Security disability payments, and a GoFundMe account set up after her fake kidnapping. The judge wanted to deter others from committing similar crimes by punishing Sherry. She spoke at her sentencing hearing, expressing regret and apologizing to those who had suffered because of her actions. Sherry acknowledged her guilt, saying she was responsible for lying and bringing shame to herself and those around her. In August 2023, Sherry was released from prison and moved to a halfway house. Sherry and her husband Keith separated on the day of her arrest in March 2022. After Sherry pleaded guilty, Keith filed for divorce the next month and sought full custody of their children. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Rebecca Bliefnick. Rebecca and Tim, who met at Quincy University, were the epitome of a perfect couple. Rebecca was a biology major and a tennis player, while Tim was a star football player. 2 years after graduating, the practical couple decided to tie the knot. Instead of splurging on an engagement ring and a lavish honeymoon, they chose to save their money. Although Rebecca had a genuine interest in medicine and had dreamed of becoming a doctor, she decided to pursue motherhood instead. Her dream came true when she and Tim had 3 sons. Tim was known for his charisma and ability to entertain. In 2008, he auditioned for American Gladiators, making it to the final round. Years later, in 2019, he received an invitation from the producers of Family Feud to participate in the show with his family. Rebecca's nursing school commitments prevented her from joining Tim on the TV show Family Feud. Undeterred, Tim assembled a team of family members, including his parents and brothers. The show's format features 2 teams competing to guess the most popular responses to survey questions from 100 people. Despite being unprepared, Tim's team performed well, earning points and ranking second on the scoreboard. They went on to participate in 3 episodes, winning a total of $20,000, which was divided equally among the family members. However, Tim did not share any of the winnings with his wife Rebecca. This decision highlights the strain on Tim and Rebecca's marriage, which began when Rebecca pursued a nursing career against Tim's wishes. Tim had expressed concerns about Rebecca's well-being and ability to manage stress, but Rebecca's friends believed Tim was opposed to her independence and autonomy. Rebecca's friends noticed that she was becoming increasingly unhappy in her marriage over time. At first, her marriage to Tim was relatively happy for about 5 years, but then Tim started to become more controlling and manipulative. Despite Rebecca's hard work in her nursing studies and job, Tim didn't pull his weight at home, leaving Rebecca to handle most of the responsibilities. Rebecca realized that their marriage was struggling and wanted to fix it, so she suggested that they go to marriage counseling together. She believed that counseling could help them find solutions and improve their relationship. However, Tim refused to go, despite Rebecca's efforts to save their marriage. In January 2021, after 11 years of marriage, Tim suddenly filed for divorce, which caught Rebecca off guard. She had been committed to working through their issues, but Tim had already made up his mind. He moved out of their family home and into a new house across town, leaving Rebecca to pick up the pieces. Tim and Rebecca's divorce was extremely contentious. They were unable to agree on anything, and their communication broke down completely. The couple disputed several issues, including who would get custody of the children, how they would divide their property, and how much alimony one would pay the other. Things escalated to the point where Tim felt threatened and applied for a court order to protect himself from Rebecca, alleging that she was stalking and harassing him. Rebecca had a different view of the situation, accusing Tim of harassment. She shared her concerns with friends through text messages, describing incidents where Tim yelled at her, pushed her in front of their sons, and threw things. Rebecca feared Tim might do something drastic to take her children away, which alarmed her sister, who knew Rebecca's fears were valid and that she needed help to protect herself. Rebecca then filed for an order of protection against Tim, claiming he entered her home without permission and lied about their interactions. However, the judge denied both Rebecca and Tim's requests, instead ordering them to stay away from each other's homes, except during child custody exchanges. In February 2023, Tim told the police he wouldn't return a gun, calling Rebecca a derogatory name. At the time, Rebecca and Tim's 3 sons, aged 12, 10, and 5, were staying with Tim at his home, just a mile from Rebecca's residence. Their divorce was set to be finalized in just 1 week. Tim contacted Rebecca's father the next day, worried because he couldn't reach Rebecca, and she had failed to pick up the boys from school as planned. Given Rebecca's dedication as a mother, her father suspected something was seriously wrong. Concerned for Rebecca's safety, her father rushed to her house. When he arrived, he entered the house, calling out to Rebecca, but received no response. He went upstairs to her bedroom, where he found a disturbing scene. Rebecca lay on her back, covered in blood and gunshot wounds. After Rebecca's father discovered her body in the bathroom, detectives and forensic experts arrived at the house. They began by carefully examining the outside of the property, searching for clues. Their investigation revealed that the suspect had probably entered the house by forcing open an upstairs window in one of the children's bedrooms. The discovery led investigators to believe that the suspect used a patio chair to gain access to the house and climb up to the roof. By retracing the suspect's likely path, they went to Rebecca's bedroom, where they found the door had been violently kicked in or broken. The state of the door suggested to investigators that the suspect had forcibly entered the room, probably in search of Rebecca. Evidence indicated that Rebecca had tried to barricade herself in the bathroom, but the suspect had pursued her and caught up. Ultimately, the suspect shot Rebecca inside the bathroom. During their search of the bathroom where Rebecca's body was found, investigators stumbled upon her cell phone. Upon examining Rebecca's phone, investigators found a 911 call dialed at 1:11 a.m. This led them to form a theory about the events of that night. They believed that as the suspect chased Rebecca through the house, she tried to call for help, but accidentally dialed a wrong number before she could try calling 911 again. The misdialed call at 1:11 a.m. suggested to investigators that the suspect had knocked the phone out of Rebecca's hand. They believed Rebecca was likely killed around this time. However, when police questioned Rebecca's neighbors, none of them remembered hearing any noise around 1:11 a.m., which raised suspicions among the investigators. A thorough search of Rebecca's house revealed that her murder was not a botched burglary, as nothing was stolen. Despite this, the perpetrator left behind significant evidence. One notable discovery was a partial shoe print found near the point where the suspect entered the house. The shoe print discovered at the crime scene could be crucial in identifying the type of shoe worn by the suspect, including its make and model, as well as providing details about the size and shape of their feet. The presence of 8 9mm shell casings and small pieces of shredded plastic near Rebecca's body also provide significant leads for the investigators. Despite collecting these key pieces of evidence, the investigators were unsure how to interpret their findings. To gain more insight, they decided to send the evidence to forensic laboratories for further analysis. Specifically, they wanted to determine if any of Rebecca's personal belongings matched the evidence found at the crime scene. The investigation began when Rebecca's father found her lifeless body in the bathroom of her home. Upon arriving at the scene, investigators carefully examined the exterior of the house, leading them to identify how the perpetrator gained entry by prying open an upstairs window in one of the children's bedrooms. Here's what likely happened. The suspect used a patio chair to climb up to the roof and entered the house. The investigators retraced the suspect's steps and found that the bedroom door had been violently kicked in or broken, suggesting the suspect had forced their way in, probably looking for Rebecca. It seems Rebecca tried to barricade herself in the bathroom, but the suspect caught up with her. Unfortunately, the suspect shot and killed Rebecca in the bathroom. The investigators found Rebecca's phone near her body and examined it. They discovered that she had dialed 911, but mistakenly entered an extra digit, 91126, at 1:11 a.m. This discovery helped the investigators piece together the events. They believe Rebecca was desperately trying to call for help as the suspect chased her through the house, but she accidentally dialed the wrong number. Before she could try calling 911 again, the suspect likely knocked the phone out of her hand. The timing of the misdialed call at 1:11 a.m. led investigators to believe that Rebecca's murder likely occurred around that time. However, when they questioned Rebecca's neighbors, none of them reported hearing any suspicious noises, which was surprising given the fact that she had suffered multiple gunshot wounds. A thorough search of Rebecca's house revealed that her murder was not the result of a burglary gone wrong, as nothing was stolen. Despite this, the perpetrator left behind a significant amount of evidence. One crucial discovery was a partial shoe print near the point of entry, which could help identify the brand and model of the shoe. as well as the size and shape of the suspect's foot. The crime scene also yielded 8 9mm shell casings, and small pieces of shredded plastic were found scattered near Rebecca's body. After gathering all the evidence, the investigators were unsure what to make of their findings, so they decided to send the CED evidence to forensic laboratories for further analysis. The detectives wanted to determine if any of the evidence found at the crime scene matched Rebecca's belongings. A neighbor had installed a security camera on the side of their house after their car was broken into a year earlier. The camera was directed towards the neighbor's driveway, which shared a boundary with Rebecca's home, and was set to turn on and alert the neighbor whenever it detected movement. Although the camera didn't capture anything significant on the night of Rebecca's death, it did record something unusual the previous day at 1:05 a.m. The footage showed a person walking down the driveway towards the back of Rebecca's house, a potentially crucial discovery in the case. About 48 minutes after the initial sighting, the same individual was seen walking in the opposite direction. Interestingly, Rebecca's neighbor had captured a similar incident on their camera about a week prior, on February 14th. After reviewing their security footage, Rebecca's neighbors noticed a suspicious dark-clad figure lurking around her house on Valentine's Day, prompting them to alert her immediately. Upon learning about the mysterious figure, Rebecca became increasingly paranoid. Although she claimed not to have seen anyone on her property, she had heard unsettling voices in her backyard the previous night, which frightened her. Based on the security camera footage, the police expanded their search to neighboring houses to gather more evidence of the dark-clad individual. Their search led them to a house near the Quinney bus barn, where they found footage of a person riding a bike, dressed in dark clothing, heading towards Rebecca's house. These videos confirmed the description of the mysterious person seen in the original driveway footage, providing a clear consistency in the suspect's appearance. After analyzing the recorded times of the videos, detectives suspected that the person on the bike was the same individual seen in Rebecca's driveway footage. Although Rebecca's neighbor's security camera didn't capture footage of the mysterious person on the night of her murder, officers found footage of someone on a bike riding towards Rebecca's house just before and after the incident. This person matched the description of the individual seen lurking in Rebecca's driveway in the days leading up to her murder. While the video evidence was helpful in the investigation, its poor quality limited the information it provided. The detectives couldn't identify the person in the video due to the grainy image, making it difficult to determine their gender. However, they did notice one distinctive feature. The bike had no reflectors on its wheels. When Rebecca's sister heard that she was murdered, only one person came to mind as a suspect: Rebecca's estranged husband, Tim. Rebecca's sister, who had a first-hand account of the contentious divorce between Rebecca and Tim, shared this information with the detectives working on her sister's case. The detectives suspected Tim of murdering Rebecca, especially since her murder happened just a week before their divorce was due to be finalized. During the investigation, they made a crucial discovery: a bike with no reflectors on its wheels, similar to the one seen on security footage, was found just a block from Tim's house. This discovery increased the suspicion surrounding Tim, leading the detectives to obtain a search warrant for his home. When the police executed the warrant, Tim cooperated fully, standing outside his home with the officers as they searched his belongings. On March 13, 2023, 2 weeks after Rebecca's murder, Tim was arrested and charged with her murder. When his mugshot was released, Rebecca's family and friends were shocked by his appearance, which was very different from the clean-cut man they had known. Tim's friends and family were shocked by his disheveled appearance, which they attributed to the emotional toll of his recent divorce. His once neat and tidy hair was now unkempt, and his clothes were messy. They speculated that the divorce had affected not only his physical appearance, but also his mental well-being. However, Tim had a surprising explanation for his changed look. He revealed that he was growing his hair out to support a charity campaign for cancer research. Despite this, a viral video clip showed Tim's appearance on Family Feud, where he made a bizarre statement about regretting his marriage, which took on a disturbing tone after he was arrested for murdering his wife. Many people believed that Tim's comment on Family Feud was a strange and unsettling prediction of what would eventually happen. They thought it showed that he had hidden feelings about his wife and was a sign that something bad was happening in their relationship. When the police looked into Tim's phone, they found that he had made a fake Facebook account under the name John Smith. During their investigation, they discovered that Tim had been searching for a specific type of bicycle on Facebook, a blue Schwinn bike with no reflectors on the wheels. This was an important discovery because it matched the description of a bike that was found abandoned just 1 block away from Tim's house. Despite having strong evidence against Tim, the detectives faced a significant obstacle when they arrested him. Tim was held in jail without the possibility of bail, but he requested a quick trial, which is his right under the law. Prosecutors were required to bring the matter to trial within 90 days of Tim's arrest. The prosecution faced a significant challenge in convincing a jury, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Tim murdered Rebecca due to the absence of a confession or DNA evidence. Juries typically look for these 2 key elements in criminal cases. To prove Tim's guilt in the murder of his wife Rebecca, the prosecution faced a significant challenge. Exactly 3 months after Rebecca's tragic murder in her home, Tim's trial began on May 23, 2023. During the trial, the prosecution presented several key pieces of evidence found at the crime scene. One notable piece of evidence was the shredded plastic fragments discovered around Rebecca's body. The prosecution argued that these fragments came from an owl's grocery bag. Further investigation revealed that similar bags were found in Tim's house. The prosecution alleged that Tim used these bags as a makeshift silencer when he shot his estranged wife multiple times. They claimed that the bags were used to muffle the sound of the gunfire, preventing it from being heard by others. The prosecution also presented DNA evidence, suggesting that Tim left behind DNA while using the Aldi bags. An expert testified that it was highly likely Tim contributed to the DNA found, and that his DNA could not be ruled out as a match for the DNA found under Rebecca's fingernails. The prosecution presented evidence suggesting that a crowbar found in Tim's basement might have been used to force open the window at the victim's house on the night of the murder. Although an expert testified that there were microscopic similarities between the crowbar and the window's pry mark, she couldn't conclusively say that the crowbar was involved. To build a stronger case, the prosecution presented records of several searches made on Tim's phone, including how to open my door with a crowbar, how to make a homemade pistol silencer, how to clean gunpowder off your hands, and average police response time in Quinny. The prosecution's expert witness testified that she compared the shell casings found at the crime scene to those found at Tim's house during the investigation. Her analysis revealed that 27 of the casings from Tim's home were fired from the same 9mm weapon used to kill Rebecca. When investigators searched Tim's house, they didn't find Rebecca's 9mm gun, which he had refused to return to her. Tim claimed he hadn't seen the gun in months before Rebecca's murder. During the trial, the defense had the opportunity to call witnesses, but chose not to. After the 6-day trial, the jury took 4 hours to reach a guilty verdict, and Tim was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Despite claiming innocence and planning to appeal, Tim is behind bars, and Rebecca's family believes justice has been served. During the sentencing hearing, Rebecca's family read impact statements. One of her sisters addressed Tim, telling him how his actions affected his son's well-being. She stressed that his choices were causing his sons to suffer. Rebecca's sister vowed to keep her memory alive for her 3 sons, even after her passing. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Dalia DiPolito. On a sunny afternoon in Bon Beach, Florida, a man named Muhammad visited the local police department with a shocking story. He claimed that a woman, whom he knew only as Delilah, had approached him with an unusual and disturbing request. Muhammad alleged that Delilah had offered to hire him to commit a murder. While his story seemed plausible, Muhammad failed to provide one crucial detail: Delilah's last name. Despite this limitation, the Bon Beach Police Department took Muhammad's claim seriously and launched an investigation. The detectives were tasked with identifying the mysterious Delilah and determining who her husband was. To gather more information, they decided to use Muhammad as bait to set up a meeting with Delilah. They chose a local mobile gas station as the meeting location, given Muhammad's statement that Delilah lived nearby. At the designated meeting spot, the police set up several surveillance vehicles to monitor the encounter, hoping to gather evidence and piece together the puzzle surrounding Delilah's identity and motives. Before the woman arrived, the detectives briefed Muhammad on what to say to her. They secretly fitted him with a wire and recorder, allowing them to listen in on their conversation as it happened. As they continued to monitor the mobile gas station, the detectives focused on the interaction between Muhammad and a woman named Delilah. What surprised them was Delilah's appearance, which didn't fit the typical profile of someone who would want her husband killed. Delilah, an attractive woman wearing a skirt and tank top, got into the car with Muhammad. Muhammad, pretending to be hesitant, asked if it was worth having someone killed. Delilah replied that she couldn't divorce her husband because she feared he would retaliate if she tried to leave him and divide their assets. The woman told Muhammad that after her husband's murder, she intended to create an alibi by going to a different location, such as Boca Raton. Muhammad then asked her if anyone would suspect her of involvement in her husband's death, and she confidently replied that no one would accuse her. The detectives were stunned by the woman's casual tone as she discussed hiring a hitman to kill her husband. As they continued to listen, they were horrified by the woman's nonchalant attitude, which made it seem like she was discussing a routine business deal rather than arranging for someone's murder. At one point, she even showed Muhammad photos of her husband, which further revealed her callous disregard for human life. During the conversation, the woman made a stunning admission to Muhammad, revealing that she planned to pay a hitman to kill her husband. This confession was a crucial breakthrough for the detective, as it confirmed the woman's involvement in soliciting a murder. However, the detective knew that to build a stronger case, they needed to gather more evidence. The woman told Muhammad that she would withdraw $1,000 in cash and hand it over to the hitman later. After discussing the plan with Muhammad, the woman left the mobile gas station and drove home. The detectives followed her to gather information about her address. A records check revealed that the address belonged to Dalia Doe, not Delilah as they had initially thought. With this new information, the detectives ran a background check on the vehicle Dalia used to meet Muhammad at the gas station. This allowed them to obtain the registered owner's name, which was her husband, Mike Doe. To their friends, Mike and Dalia seemed like a loving and happy couple. The two had met when Mike was browsing the internet at work, looking for something to do when he was feeling bored. Mike found a website that offered escort services and decided to hire one. This decision would have a profound impact on his life. When the escort arrived, Mike was immediately drawn to her physical attractiveness. He thought she was exceptionally beautiful, and he felt an undeniable attraction between them. As they spent more time together, they quickly developed a strong connection, effortlessly engaging in friendly conversations over the next few days. Mike and Dalia's friendship blossomed into a romantic relationship after they spent a weekend together. They quickly realized their feelings for each other went beyond friendship. As a result, they became a committed couple. A few months into their relationship, they stumbled upon an engagement ring store, which led to a conversation about marriage, a topic they had previously discussed. Mike was drawn to the idea of spending his life with Dahlia and decided to purchase a ring, symbolizing his commitment to their future together. Despite their relationship moving quickly, Mike was deeply happy and in love. Before meeting Dahlia, Mike had a troubled past. In 2001, he was sentenced to 2 years in prison in Broward County, Florida, for grand theft, fraud, and false telephone sales. At the time, Mike was struggling with drug addiction and desperation for money, which he later acknowledged was no excuse for his mistakes. Mike served his 2-year sentence and was given 28 years of probation. The court granted Mike a lengthy probation period to give him time to pay back the significant amount of money he owed. However, when Mike returned home, he was unsure of how he would repay the debt. Determined to settle his debt, Mike found a job as a cook at a local restaurant, earning $350 weekly, which was insufficient to make a notable dent in the substantial amount he owed. To improve his financial situation and secure an early release from probation, Mike sought a better-paying job. A friend offered him an office job near his home, allowing him to transition from cooking to email marketing. As Mike and Dahlia started dating, he eventually confided in her about his probation and the limitations it imposed. Mike explained that he required permission to leave the state while on probation. Dahlia, who had a strong desire to travel, expressed her wish to explore the world with Mike. To help Mike become debt-free, Dahlia offered to provide $91,000 if he paid the remaining balance, enabling them to clear the debt and start the life Dahlia had envisioned. Dahlia, a successful real estate agent, was financially stable and able to help her partner Mike pay off his debt and clear his name. Mike consulted his attorney to understand the process, and the attorney advised him to gather the necessary funds to be released from probation. To facilitate the payment, Dahlia and Mike agreed that she would send the money from her Bank of America account to the attorney. Dahlia informed Mike that she had transferred the funds, but when Mike followed up with the attorney, he was told that the payment had not been received. Mike waited a day and then asked Dahlia about the status of the transfer. However, Dahlia insisted that she had sent the money, leaving Mike frustrated and unsure about what was happening. Mike's concern grew, so he contacted his attorney again, only to be told that they still hadn't received anything. Dahlia claimed to have sent the money to the attorney, but couldn't explain the delay. 2 days had passed since the transaction, but the attorney remained without the funds. Mike asked Dahlia for proof of the transaction, needing the receipt to verify the details. However, Dahlia suspected foul play, suggesting the attorney might have stolen the money. She vowed to find the missing sum, while Mike sought to move past the misunderstanding. Meanwhile, a supervisor at the Bon Beach Police Department reached out to Sergeant Whitey Jean for assistance. Sergeant Jean met with a detective working on Dahlia Deo's case. The detective briefed Sergeant Whitey Jean on the case, revealing that Dahlia wanted to hire someone to kill her husband. The detective explained that Dahlia was waiting for a call from the would-be hitman and asked Sergeant Whitey Jean to pretend to be the hitman and arrange a meeting with her. Sergeant Whitey Jean agreed to help with the investigation and took on the role of the hitman. As the hitman, he contacted Dahlia and demanded a $3,000 advance and the key to her house. The detective had requested the key as part of their plan to make Dahlia believe the murder would happen at her home. However, Dahlia was unhappy about the payment demand and called Muhammad, the informant, to express her concerns. During the call, the detective overheard Dahlia's fears and worried that they might have scared her off. They feared that Dahlia might change her mind and find someone else to commit the crime. On August 3, 2009, Dahlia met with Sergeant Whitey Jean, who was posing as a hitman, in a CVS parking lot. However, Dahlia didn't bring the agreed-upon payment, which led Sergeant Whitey Jean to warn her that if he had to wait until after the murder to get paid, she would need to give him $7,000 in cash up front. Sergeant Whitey Jean explained to Dahlia that he would plan the staged break-in and murder of her husband Mike on Wednesday morning, taking advantage of the recent robberies in the area. He outlined his plan to make it look like a legitimate break-in, shooting Mike twice in the head to make it appear like a robbery gone wrong. Sergeant Whitey Jean also told Dahlia that he would contact her a few days after the murder, as he knew the police would be closely monitoring her activities in the aftermath of the crime. Sergeant Whitey Jean cautioned Dahlia that the delay was essential to avoid raising suspicions and maintaining the operation's secrecy. During their conversation, he gave her multiple opportunities to withdraw from the murder-for-hire plot. However, Dahlia expressed her unwavering commitment, stating she was 5,000% certain about her decision to have her husband killed. Dahlia provided Sergeant Whitey Jean with crucial details, revealing that her husband, Mike, followed a predictable morning routine, walking the dog at a specific time and leaving the house unlocked. This information was vital to the success of the plan. She also told the sergeant that she would create an alibi by going to the gym during the murder, ensuring her absence from the house when the crime would take place. The sergeant instructed Dahlia to arrive at the gym by 6 a.m. and informed her that he would enter her home at 6:30 a.m. After speaking with Dahlia, Sergeant Whitey Jean was taken aback by her extraordinary cruelty, having encountered few individuals in his line of work who exhibited a similar level of ruthlessness. The detective wanted to create a fake crime scene at Dahlia and Mike's home to see how Dahlia would react on the day of the alleged hit. To do this, they needed to know Dahlia's whereabouts. At 5:30 a.m., Dahlia told Mike she was going to the gym, which Mike found unusual since she had never gone that early before. However, he didn't think much of it and continued with his morning routine. The detective kept an eye on Dahlia to make sure she went to the gym and went inside. This confirmed that the plan could move forward. But before setting up the fake crime scene, the detective needed to fill Mike Dio in on what was happening. About 30 minutes after Dahlia left for the gym, loud banging noises were heard at Mike and Dahlia's house, prompting Mike to rush to the door. When he opened it, he was surprised to find several police officers standing there. Confused and worried, Mike asked them what was going on. The detective informed Mike that his wife, Dahlia, had tried to hire a hitman to kill him, but the hitman was actually an undercover cop. The entire situation was a setup to look like a murder-for-hire plot. Mike was in shock when the police told him that his wife had hired someone to kill him. The detectives took him to the police station, leaving his home to be staged as a crime scene with fake police tape and lights. The detectives then called Dahlia, telling her that they needed to question her about an incident involving her husband. When she arrived home, she found her house surrounded by police cars and crime scene tape. The detective told her that her husband had been murdered, and she broke down in tears. However, the detective noticed that Dahlia's reaction seemed unusual, as she didn't produce any tears. The detective began questioning Dahlia about suspects, trying to get her to confess to hiring the hitman. Dahlia claimed that her marriage was fine and that Mike's problems with probation and a stock fraud conviction might have led to his murder. Unbeknownst to her, Mike was watching from another room. The detective then revealed that they knew the truth behind the murder and brought in Sergeant Whitey Jean, who Dahlia claimed she didn't know. The detective arrested Dahlia for solicitation of murder, revealing that the hitman was an undercover cop. Mike was given the chance to confront Dahlia, but she refused to admit her guilt. Dahlia's trial took place on April 26, 2011, where Mike testified against her for 3 days. Her defense argued that the entire plot was a publicity stunt for a reality TV show, but Mike denied any involvement. Mike denied any interest in reality TV shows and claimed he had no involvement in Dahlia's alleged plot to kill him. He also stated he had no knowledge of public relations. After the trial, the jury found Dahlia guilty of solicitation to commit first-degree murder with a firearm and she was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Mike was relieved by the verdict, but also felt a sense of closure, knowing justice had been served. However, Dahlia's attorneys appealed the conviction, citing a juror's remark about Dahlia poisoning Mike's Starbucks drink, which was not presented as evidence during the trial. The appellate court reversed the conviction, and a second trial was held. Despite the state's confidence in their case, the jury reached a hung verdict, resulting in a mistrial. A third trial was held, and Dahlia was again found guilty, this time receiving a 16-year prison sentence. Dahlia's defense team continued to appeal her conviction, but the Florida Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court declined to review her case. Her attorneys plan to file a motion with a federal judge to review the third trial for constitutional violations, which would be their last chance to secure a new trial. Despite her conviction, Dahlia has become a respected figure in prison, leading a Bible study group and earning praise from fellow inmates. She is separated from her young son, who lives with his grandmother, and deeply misses being with him. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Emmett Corrigan. Ashley Harmon was a vibrant and intelligent person who experienced a challenging time when her parents divorced at the age of 9. During this period, she took on a maternal role, caring for her 5 siblings and protecting them. Ashley's faith was the cornerstone of her life. As a devout Mormon and a member of the Church of Jesus Christ and the Latter-day Saints, she turned to her faith in God for strength and comfort during difficult times. Her unwavering belief provided her with a sense of peace, resilience, and determination, enabling her to overcome obstacles and face challenges with courage. In 2003, while studying human development at Utah State, Ashley met Emmett, a philosophy student. Emmett, like Ashley, had experienced the pain of his parents' divorce at a young age. However, he found solace in the Mormon faith and was baptized into the Church of Jesus Christ and the Latter-day Saints at 17. Ashley was immediately drawn to Emmett's charm, and he reciprocated her feelings. Emmett was immediately smitten with Ashley's intelligence when they first met, and he quickly realized she was the one he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. He confided in his closest friends about his feelings, and their relationship blossomed over the next few months. During Christmas in 2008, Emmett proposed to Ashley, and to his delight, she accepted. The couple tied the knot in a Mormon temple, surrounded by their shared values and beliefs. The ceremony was a beautiful expression of their commitment to each other and their faith. As newlyweds, Emmett and Ashley were filled with joy and excitement as they began their new life together. Their marriage was built on a foundation of stability and happiness, which is deeply rooted in Mormon values. In the Mormon faith, marriage is considered a sacred and eternal bond that transcends mortal life. While divorce is not entirely ruled out, it is strongly discouraged and only permitted under specific, extreme circumstances. In 2005, Ashley and Emmett had twin daughters, and they were thrilled to start their journey as parents. Emmett loved being a father and cherished every moment with his girls. Ashley was happy to be living the life she always wanted. At the time, they were college students at Utah State University, and they managed to balance school with taking care of their babies. Although they faced challenges, their faith and love for each other helped them overcome difficulties. With determination, they pushed through and worked towards a better future. In 2009, Emmett graduated from Utah State University with high honors, went to law school, and passed the bar exam, becoming a bankruptcy attorney. During this time, Ashley stayed at home to care for their growing family, while Emmett focused on building his career. Ashley Corrigan took on the role of managing the household and raising their 4 young children. To outsiders, the Corrigan family appeared to have a perfect life, a beautiful home, multiple kids, and a fulfilling career for Emmett. But beneath the surface, things were different. In August 2010, Emmett began to feel overwhelmed by the financial burden of providing for his family of 6. To remedy this, Emmett decided to start his own business, a criminal defense firm. Through a friend, he met Candy Hall, a reputable paralegal with experience in criminal law. The two met for lunch and got along well, leading Emmett to hire her for his firm. Candy was married to Robert Hall, a hard worker and devoted father. When Candy landed the job at Emmett's firm, she was initially thrilled, and her husband and children were happy for her. As the stress of building a business and raising their large family took its toll, Ashley noticed a change in her marriage to Emmett. He was overwhelmed by his responsibilities and saw a release by spending excessive time at the gym, often at inconvenient times that left Ashley to care for their 4 children alone. Despite their growing distance, Ashley and Emmett welcomed their 5th child, a son, on January 15, 2011. However, Emmett's behavior was different from when their other children were born. He began spending more and more time away from home, sometimes staying out overnight. Ashley confided in her sister, expressing her genuine concern that Emmett's activities might be evidence of infidelity. Emmett's assistant, Candy Hall, was facing marital problems similar to Ashley's. Candy confided in a friend that her husband Rob was jealous of her working for the charming Emmett. The constant arguing was putting a strain on their relationship. On March 6, 2011, Ashley and Emmett celebrated their 7th wedding anniversary, but Emmett didn't join her. Instead, he claimed to be at a bodybuilding competition, leaving Ashley to take care of their children by herself. Ashley felt anxious about her marriage, wondering if she was to blame for Emmett's unhappiness. Since divorce wasn't an option, she decided to work on improving their relationship. With a fresh resolve on March 11th, Ashley aimed to restore unity to her home. Ashley was determined to repair her strained relationship with her husband Emmett. She spent the entire day planning a perfect evening, attending to every detail to make it special. She cooked his favorite meal, tidied the house, and reminded the children to be on their best behavior. Ashley set the table and waited for Emmett to arrive home from work at 6 p.m. However, he walked in 2 hours late. When she tried to greet him with a kiss, he turned away, leaving her feeling cold. Despite his aloofness and the growing distance between them, Ashley was resolute in her mission to rekindle Emmett's love for her. She firmly believed that their love was worth fighting for and was willing to do whatever it took to salvage their relationship. 2 hours after she had finished preparing dinner, the family finally gathered around the table to eat. But to Ashley's dismay, Emmett claimed he wasn't hungry. Ashley prepared a meal for her husband Emmett, but he showed little interest, leaving her disappointed and hurt. When he claimed he needed to go to Walgreens, Ashley sensed something was wrong and asked him to stay and talk. Emmett responded harshly and left, leaving Ashley confused and hurt. Meanwhile, Emmett's assistant, Candy, was going through a tough time in her marriage to Rob Hall. That same day, Rob decided to pack his bags and leave their home, marking the end of their relationship. Rob had a strong bond with his loved ones, but he needed space. One evening, Rob asked his daughter if she'd borrowed his ex-wife Candy's car. She said no. Later, she drove past Walgreens, saw Candy's car, and called her dad to let him know. Rob's casual response had a profound impact on 2 families. Ashley lay awake in bed, her heart filled with worry as she prayed for her marriage to succeed. Despite her efforts to reach him, Emmett wasn't responding to her texts and calls, causing her great unease. Her instincts told her something was wrong, and she felt a sense of dread. Meanwhile, at around 1 p.m., a 911 call reported gunshots and a screaming woman in the Walgreens parking lot. The police responded quickly, unsure of what they would find. They didn't know if it was a random shooting, a botched drug deal, a robbery, or something else. As the first officer approached the scene, he was met with a disturbing sight. A lifeless body on the ground, and another person, wounded and clutching their head in pain. The injured person was rushed to the hospital with a gunshot wound, leaving the police with many unanswered questions. Amidst the chaos, the police were wanted to speak with one woman in particular, Candy Hall, who was present at the crime scene. Candy identified the man in the hospital as her husband Rob, and the deceased man as her boss Emmett. Emmett had suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the head and chest. Shortly after Emmett's body was discovered in the Walgreens parking lot, his wife Ashley received a knock on her door. When she answered, police officers broke the devastating news to her. Her husband Emmett was dead, a victim of a shooting. Ashley was shocked and distraught, unable to fathom what had led to this tragic event. The police then asked Ashley if she was familiar with Rob and Candy Hall. Ashley revealed that she knew Candy as Emmett's assistant, but she had long suspected that the two were having an affair. The police brought Candy in for questioning at the station, determined to piece together the events leading up to Emmett's murder and Rob's shooting. During the interrogation, Candy denied having a romantic relationship with her boss Emmett, and she vehemently rejected any suggestion of intimate relations. According to Candy, she had driven to Walgreens that night solely to pick up a prescription. Candy and Emmett met by chance in a store and decided to take a drive in Emmett's car. During the drive, Candy's phone rang. It was her estranged husband Rob. Candy told Rob she was with Emmett, which sparked Rob's jealousy and led to him making a violent threat against Emmett. After the phone call, Candy and Emmett stopped at a gas station and eventually arrived at Walgreens. When they got out of the car, Candy saw Rob waiting for them, visibly angry. The situation escalated into a heated argument and physical fight between Rob and Emmett. Amidst the chaos, Candy heard 3 loud gunshots and turned to see both men on the ground. She saw a gun lying nearby, picked it up and threw it away. When questioned by detectives, Candy claimed she didn't know who fired the first shots. Rob, who suffered a superficial gunshot wound to the head, was treated at the hospital and then interviewed by detectives. He told them that the gun found at the scene was his, and that it fell out of his pocket during the fight with Emmett at Walgreens. According to Rob, Emmett dove for the gun, and they struggled over it, resulting in Emmett shooting him in the head. Rob claimed he didn't know who shot Emmett during the struggle. The detectives weren't surprised that Rob didn't remember much due to his head wound from the gunshot. However, they did wonder if Emmett had fired the first shot, considering he ended up dead. To get to the bottom of the incident, which occurred in the Walgreens parking lot, the detectives checked the security footage. Upon reviewing the footage, they saw Rob Hall arrive at the parking lot at 9:55 p.m. 1 minute later, he entered the Walgreens store, rushing through each aisle as if searching for someone. The footage then showed Rob leaving the store at 10:06 p.m. and parking his car beside the candy section, where he waited for several minutes. 10 minutes after the shooting, Emmett's truck appeared on security footage as it pulled into the parking lot, but the shooting itself wasn't caught on camera. Although Candy, Emmett's assistant, initially denied having a romantic relationship with her boss, co-workers whispered that they were more than just colleagues. In fact, co-workers often saw Candy and Rob spending time together in Rob's office, with the door closed. Just 3 weeks after she started her job, detectives made a surprising discovery. Emmett had accompanied Candy to the public defender's office to discuss divorcing Rob. During their investigation, crime scene investigators searched Emmett's vehicle and found steroids in the glove compartment. This didn't surprise many of Emmett's loved ones, as he was obsessed with bodybuilding and had been acting strangely, leading them to suspect he was using steroids. When Candy gave her statement to the detectives, she described a distinctive pattern of gunshots that suggested Rob had shot and killed Emmett twice before turning the gun on himself. This evidence was enough for the detectives to obtain an arrest warrant for Rob Hall, charging him with first-degree murder. Rob was arrested and charged with Emmett's murder. The consequences of Rob's actions were severe. If convicted, he faced life in prison without parole or the death penalty. As the trial approached, Ashley, Emmett's wife, hoped it would bring her some closure. She believed that understanding her husband's infidelity and death would help her heal. Prosecutors argued that Rob was angry at Emmett for having an affair with Candy and blamed Emmett for ruining his marriage. According to the prosecution, Rob shot Emmett and then killed himself. However, Rob's defense team told a different story. They claimed Emmett was the aggressor on the night he died, and that he had a history of steroid abuse. They alleged that during the altercation, Emmett grabbed Rob's gun and shot Rob before Rob regained possession and killed Emmett in self-defense. One of the key witnesses in Rob's trial was his wife, Candy. Her testimony differed slightly from her initial statement to the police. Instead of hearing 2 rapid gunshots followed by another, she claimed to have heard a pop, followed by 2 more rapid pops. This new version of events supported the defense's argument that Emmett shot Rob first. To prove Rob was the shooter, prosecutors presented forensic evidence that the type of weapon used in the parking lot shooting left significant gunshot residue, GSR, after firing. Investigators tested Rob and Emmett for GSR and found that Rob's left palm had 32 particles, his right palm had 23, while Emmett had only 1 particle on his left hand and none on his right. The forensic evidence proved that Rob was the one who fired the gun 3 times, and Emmett never possessed the weapon. After careful consideration, the jury found Rob Hall not guilty of first-degree murder, but guilty of second-degree murder, which means the murder was not premeditated. The judge sentenced Rob to 30 years in prison. Rob will be eligible for parole in 2028 when he is 58 years old. Despite the conviction, Rob maintains his innocence and appealed his conviction in 2021, but the Idaho Supreme Court denied him a retrial. 2 months after Emmett's murder, Candy Hall was arrested and charged with embezzlement for allegedly stealing money from her previous employer. This charge was unrelated to Emmett's murder. Candy pleaded guilty and was sentenced to imprisonment, released on parole in 2014, and remains on probation until 2026. In an interview, Candy expressed deep feelings of guilt over the incident, mainly due to its impact on her relationships with her children. She hopes to prove to them that it was a regrettable mistake. Ashley struggled to come to terms with her husband's murder by his lover's husband. In a 2015 interview, she faced Candy Hall for the first time. Despite her emotional pain, Ashley decided to move on and create a new life. She moved out of town with their 5 children, who gradually adjusted to the change and found joy again. Ashley eventually remarried, had 2 more children, and now blogs for victims of trauma. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Maria Munoz. Maria Munoz was born on January 25, 1989, in Puerto Rico to Marisol Rodriguez and Jorge Luis Munoz. She was the middle child of 3, along with her siblings Maris Al Munoz and Peter Hernandez. Tragically, Maria's mother passed away when she was young, leaving her to take on a significant caregiving role for her brothers. It was during this time that Maria met Joel Pellet, a nursing student who was 11 years older than her. Despite their age difference, they got married in 2011. After their wedding, they relocated to Laredo, Texas, where Joel landed a high-paying job as a nurse anesthetist at a local hospital. Their new financial stability allowed them to live a life of luxury, complete with expensive cars and exotic vacations. By the time Maria was 31, she had left her job to focus on raising their 2 young sons. As a devoted stay-at-home mom, Maria cherished every moment with her children and supported her husband Joel, who was 40 at the time. Maria was a devoted mother who spent quality time with her children, taking them to the park and reading to them before bed. She also made time for her own interests, like playing the piano. Despite her happiness at home, she harbored a long-held dream of returning to school and becoming a nurse again. From the outside, it seemed like Maria and her husband Pellet had a perfect relationship. He would frequently share photos of his family with friends and colleagues, boasting about how wonderful they were. However, beneath the surface, things started to take a turn in 2018, after Maria gave birth to their second son. Those close to Pellet began to notice a change in his behavior. Pellet underwent a physical transformation, losing weight and gaining muscle. He also became more outgoing and flirtatious with other women, behavior that didn't align with what was expected of a married man. On social media, he started removing photos of his wife and children, replacing them with pictures of himself alone. This new online persona made it seem like he was single and carefree, without the responsibilities of a husband and father. In 2020, Maria's life was turned upside down when she discovered her husband, Pellet, was having an affair with a surgical nurse named Janet Arando. Despite her suspicions, finding airline tickets he had purchased for a trip to Europe with his mistress was the final confirmation of his infidelity. Maria was consumed by heartbreak, depression, and a deep sense of betrayal. She felt lost and alone, struggling to come to terms with the fact that her 10-year marriage was built on lies. To cope with her emotional turmoil, Maria began seeing a therapist who prescribed medication to support her mental health. As Maria grappled with her emotions, she found solace in writing journals, using them as an outlet to process her thoughts and feelings. However, the situation continued to deteriorate, and on September 19, 2020, Maria confronted her husband's infidelity head-on by visiting Janet's house, where she found Pellet's car parked in the driveway. Maria confronted Pellet at his house, forcing him to choose between her and Janet. He chose Janet, and during the ensuing argument, Janet called the police. However, Maria and Pellet had left by the time the police arrived. The police then called Maria while she was driving with Pellet, and they could hear him yelling at her in the background. When they got home, Pellet's anger escalated, and he punched a hole in Maria's car windshield, displaying a concerning level of force and anger. The next morning, Maria sent Pellet a text message stating her intention to hire a lawyer to help resolve their situation. Pellet replied, suggesting they handle things without lawyers, as he believed it would be too expensive. However, just a few hours later, Pellet appeared to have a change of heart. He sent Maria an emotional email expressing his deep sadness and inner turmoil. He requested a sincere and calm conversation with Maria, free from arguments. Maria agreed to meet with him, and they scheduled a meeting for 5 p.m. the following night. Before meeting her friend Yasmin Martinez, Maria was extremely anxious and messaged her about their plans. Unfortunately, the encounter ended in a terrifying way. On September 22, 2020, Maria's husband, Pellet, frantically called 911, saying his wife might have taken some prescription pills and was not breathing. Officer crews arrived at their house around 1:40 a.m. with his body cam recording the scene. Pellet was found performing CPR on Maria at the top of the stairs near their bedroom, still wearing his green hospital scrubs. Their 2 sons were sleeping nearby. When paramedics arrived, they took over CPR efforts while first responders worked to save Maria's life. An officer asked Pellet about the pills Maria had supposedly taken. He quickly retrieved a bottle from the nearby bathroom medicine cabinet and handed it to the officers. The bottle was later found to contain a prescription for clonazepam, a medication used to treat acute anxiety, panic attacks, and epilepsy. Benzodiazepines, like Kazam, calm the nervous system to produce a relaxing effect. However, when an officer examined the pill bottle, he discovered that it was prescribed to Pellet, not Maria. What caught his attention was that the bottle had been returned to the medicine cabinet, which is unusual in overdose cases, where the bottle is typically found near the person. The officer's body camera footage showed Pellet picking up the pill container from the floor and putting it in his pocket. This raised suspicions, as it seemed like Pellet might be hiding something. Another suspicious finding was a needle catheter on the stairs, which was unusual given the presence of 2 young children in the home. The investigators found even more disturbing evidence: syringes and IV equipment neatly packed in a medical bag. While Pellet's profession as an anesthesia nurse might explain the possession of these tools, their presence outside a clinical setting sparked important questions for the investigators. Pellet told the officers that Maria had been struggling with severe depression and her mental health had been declining. He said she had taken pills to cope with her emotions, but unfortunately, despite the responders' best efforts, she couldn't be revived and was pronounced dead at 3:58 a.m. After Maria's death, the officers questioned Pellet further in the kitchen. He stated that he and Maria had a conversation earlier that day, became intimate, and then he took a shower. When he came out, he found Maria asleep. Pellet went downstairs for an unspecified reason, and when he returned, he found Maria unresponsive and not breathing. The officers observed Pellet's strange behavior, including excessive sweating and his inability to answer simple questions about the incident. The officer noticed that Pellet was sweating excessively, more so than anyone else, including the first responder who had been trying to revive Maria for 2 hours. This heightened suspicion and led to him being taken to the police station for further questioning by Sergeant Liz Mata. At the station, Pellet was left alone in an interrogation room, which was being recorded by video cameras. When officers reviewed the footage, they were astonished to see Pellet's sudden outburst. He began screaming, crying, hitting the walls, and throwing furniture around the room. The commotion was so intense that people in the nearby hallways and rooms were frightened by the loud noises coming from the room. As a result, Sergeant Louis Matt entered the room at 4 a.m. to speak with Pellet. During their conversation, Pellet opened up again about the events surrounding Maria's death. In a shocking revelation, Pellet also confessed to having an affair with a woman named Janet. He revealed that he had left the family home 5 months prior and was living with Janet at the time of Maria's death. He shared that he had been involved with Janet for 2 years, and Maria had been aware of the affair beforehand. On the night Maria died, her husband visited their family home to talk to her about their marriage. After their conversation, they were intimate. He thought she had fallen asleep in her room, but when he checked on her 10 minutes later, he found her unresponsive. The husband confessed to the officer that he had given Maria clonazepam, a medication prescribed to him to help with her anxiety and depression. However, he couldn't provide details about how many pills she had taken or how many were left in the bottle. Despite being questioned, the husband was unable to provide any additional information to help clarify what had happened. He was released, and an autopsy was performed on Maria just 8 hours after her death. The timing of the autopsy meant that any cause of death should still be detectable in her stomach contents. However, the autopsy results revealed a surprise. No traces of pills were found in Maria's stomach. Instead, the medical examiner discovered a small red pinprick mark on the inside of her elbow, which suggested that she may have been injected with something. The discovery of the mysterious mark on Maria's hand led investigators to explore its potential connection to her death. During their investigation, they found a journal in Maria's home, which she had kept to cope with her anxiety and depression. The journal proved to be a crucial piece of evidence, revealing Maria's innermost thoughts and experiences. Investigators learned that Maria loved her husband dearly and wanted to preserve their family, despite his desire to be with someone else. She expressed her desperation to escape her emotional pain, writing, "I want it to stop. My past haunts me, and I don't want to be sad anymore." Through her journal entries, Maria documented the heartbreak she felt when her husband left their home in Laredo, leaving her to care for their 2 young sons alone. The journal, along with recordings on her cell phone, exposed her husband's abusive behavior and chronicled her emotional journey from grief to healing, and eventually, a newfound optimism for the future. Maria Munoz wrote in her journal the day before her death, "What is it that I want? Number 1, move forward." Her journal entries revealed a strong desire to live and move forward with her life, with no mention of suicide or plans to end her life. This led investigators to rule out suicide as a possible cause of death, and they continued to search for answers. Dr. John Hunsinger, Maria's previous employer and an anesthesiologist, became aware of the autopsy findings and contacted the lead detective Cruz. Dr. Hunsinger recommended a comprehensive toxicology screening, which the investigators conducted. In January 2021, the toxicology test results were finally received by investigators Sergeant Luis Matt and Cruz. Contrary to Maria's boyfriend Pellet's claim, Maria did not have clonazepam in her system. The report revealed a surprising discovery: the presence of 7 surgical drugs including morphine, Demerol, Versed, propofol, ketamine, Lian, and Narin. These medications are typically used during surgical procedures, with propofol and ketamine often administered intravenously as sedatives and for pain management. The investigation into Maria's death took a significant turn when toxicology results revealed high levels of propofol in her system. This was shocking because propofol is a highly controlled substance, typically only accessible to medical professionals working in anesthesiology. As a nurse anesthetist, Pellet would have had access to propofol, leading investigators to suspect him. Dr. Hunsinger, who worked with Pellet and had experience with propofol, was stunned by the extreme amount found in Maria's body, the highest he had ever seen. Given Pellet's profession, investigators believed he would know the exact dosage required to sedate or overdose someone. Furthermore, a small mark on Maria's arm suggested she may have been injected with a substance. With the toxicology report, Pellet's suspicious behavior, and Maria's journal, authorities felt they had sufficient evidence to arrest Pellet for Maria's murder. They quickly obtained an arrest warrant, and De La Cruz went to apprehend Pellet, who surprisingly did not resist. He was taken into custody, marking a new phase in the investigation. As police prepared to question him about Maria's death, Pellet would finally face the consequences of his actions. The trial began on March 21, 2023. During the legal proceedings, both the prosecution and defense presented their arguments. The prosecution team, an all-female group referred to as Maria's team, used Maria Muñoz's personal journal entries to build a strong case against the defendant Pellet. This evidence helped to portray Maria as a devoted wife and mother to the jury. Prosecutors portrayed Maria as a loving, intelligent, and vibrant individual, evident through her personal journal. They alleged that her husband, Pellet, drugged her by slipping substances into her drink, causing her to become unconscious. While she was incapacitated, they claimed he injected propofol into her arm. The prosecutors also suspected that Pellet deliberately delayed calling 911, ensuring that emergency responders would be unable to revive Maria upon arrival. The prosecutors believed Maria's journals provided insight into the challenges she faced, fueling their determination to seek justice for her. During the final arguments, Pellet's lawyer, Roberto Bali, claimed his client wanted to reconcile with Maria before her death. Bali pointed to the medical examiner's report, which stated that Maria's cause of death remained uncertain, and argued that there was insufficient evidence to prove Pellet's responsibility in her death. Bali highlighted a crucial detail. Pellet had given Maria a drug called Narin, commonly used to reverse overdoses, on the night she died. Bali also revealed that both Pellet and Muñoz struggled with drug addiction. Furthermore, he argued that Maria had willingly taken the drugs without being forced, as there were no signs of force on her body. However, an investigation into Maria's social circles, friends, and family revealed that she was not a drug addict. In fact, Pellet was the only person who could have supplied her with the large amount of propofol found in her system. The authorities managed to convince Pellet's girlfriend, surgical nurse Janet Arredondo, to testify against him. She disclosed that Pellet had admitted to giving Maria something to calm her down and confirmed that he had brought drugs, including propofol, home from work. The jury delivered a verdict in under an hour, finding Pellet guilty of murdering his wife, Maria, after a 9-day trial on March 30, 2023. On April 27, 2023, Pellet received a life sentence for the murder conviction, plus an additional 10 years and a $10,000 fine for tampering with evidence. As of now, Joel Pellet is serving his life sentence at a Texas Department of Criminal Justice facing the consequences of his heinous actions. His imprisonment serves as a testament to accountability and a tribute to Maria's life, ensuring that her memory is honored through the pursuit of truth and justice. The reason behind Joel Pelot's brutal act of killing his wife, Maria Munoz, is not entirely clear. However, according to the prosecution, it is believed that he was driven by a desire to end his marriage and start a new life with his girlfriend, Janet Arredondo. Regardless of the motive, Pelot's actions were inexcusable and justice had to be served. The jury's verdict has brought a sense of closure to this tragic case, confirming that heinous crimes like this will not be tolerated. The conviction serves as a powerful reminder that those who commit such atrocities will face the full weight of the law. Friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Corey Richens. Eric Richens was born on May 13, 1982, and left a lasting impact on those around him. As a child, Eric was passionate about sports, actively participating in basketball, baseball, and soccer, which showcased his athletic talent and enthusiasm for staying active. Eric's true passion, however, was anything that involved being outdoors. He was an exceptional hunter, known for his impressive marksmanship, and had amassed an impressive collection of trophy animals from around the world. With his vibrant personality, Eric had the ability to light up any room he entered, spreading joy and laughter through his storytelling, playful pranks, and contagious laughter. As an adventure seeker, Eric lived life to the fullest in Utah, where he owned a wide range of motorized vehicles, including trucks, four-wheelers, and snowmobiles. He loved exploring the outdoors and relishing the thrill of adventure. Despite his love for fun and adventure, Eric was deeply committed to his faith, being a devoted member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Eric's family supported him on a 2-year mission trip to Mexico City, where he became fluent in Spanish. After high school, he attended the University of Utah, earning a degree in international studies with a minor in Spanish in 2009. While working in construction, Eric frequently visited Home Depot, where he met Corey Darden. Over time, they developed a friendly connection, and Eric found himself attracted to her charming personality and beauty. However, he was too shy to approach her directly, so Eric asked a friend to help him get her phone number. One day, while Eric was shopping at Home Depot, his friend discreetly asked Corey for her number, telling her that Eric was interested in getting to know her better. Eric anxiously waited to see if his plan would work. Eric took the next step and called Corey to set up their first in-person meeting, unaware that it would be a life-changing event. As soon as they met, they clicked, and their first date marked the start of a romantic journey. As they introduced each other to their families, their bond grew stronger. Corey's family welcomed Eric with open arms, and Eric's family was equally impressed by Corey's character and how well she fit with him. Although Eric's sisters, Katie and Amy, were initially cautious, they soon warmed up to Corey and accepted her into their family. In 2013, Eric and Corey got married in an intimate ceremony, making their relationship official. After their wedding, Corey gave birth to their first child, Carter, followed by Ashton and then Weston, completing their ideal family. Eric naturally took to being a father, and his boys looked up to him. Eric took great pride in his sons' accomplishments, whether they excelled academically, athletically, or artistically. He consistently showed his support by attending their events and celebrating their successes. Later, Eric established a successful stonemasonry business, which flourished due to his exceptional craftsmanship and attention to detail. Clients sought him out for his expertise in creating beautiful stonework. The business provided Eric and his family with financial security. Additionally, Corey, who worked in real estate, contributed to the family's income. Her entrepreneurial spirit, coupled with her knowledge of the local market, made her a valuable asset. She would buy homes, renovate them, and sell them for a profit. The Richens family enjoyed a wealthy lifestyle, symbolizing the epitome of success. However, their seemingly perfect life came to a sudden end on March 4, 2020, when Corey called 911 to report that her husband Eric was unresponsive. When paramedics arrived, they determined that Eric had already passed away. Devastated, Corey called her mother Lisa, who rushed to be by her side. Corey's brothers, DJ and Ronnie, were present too, overcome with tears and shock. The three of them struggled to come to terms with Eric's passing. Corey recounted that the evening had begun on a happy note, as they celebrated her latest real estate business milestone, the purchase of a luxurious mansion. Before retiring to bed, Corey had even prepared Eric's favorite drink, a Moscow Mule, mixing ginger beer with vodka. Corey went to bed around 9 p.m., but ended up sleeping in her 9-year-old son's room because he was having nightmares. Later, around 3 a.m., she returned to the bedroom she shared with Eric. When she touched him, she was alarmed to find him ice-cold and unresponsive. Despite trying to wake him, she couldn't rouse him and knew something was seriously wrong. As she waited for the paramedics to arrive, Corey remembered the dispatcher's instructions to perform CPR on Eric, which she claimed to have followed. The paramedics were baffled by Eric's cause of death, speculating that it might have been an aneurysm, given his apparent good health and lack of known medical conditions. However, further investigation revealed that Eric had complained to Corey about chest pains the night before his death, which initially reinforced the aneurysm theory. But the autopsy results were shocking. Eric's cause of death was ultimately determined to be a lethal dose of fentanyl. Fentanyl is a highly potent pain medication that can be extremely dangerous and even deadly when taken in excessive amounts. After Eric's death, a critical question remained: how did this substance end up in his system? From the start, Corey and her family quickly blamed Eric's recreational drug use as the reason fentanyl was present. Corey explained that Eric would take a THC-infused gummy every night to relax, as he preferred THC, the psychoactive ingredient in cannabis, to unwind. However, Corey, her mother, and brothers had concerns about the origin of these gummies, suspecting that Eric didn't always buy them from trustworthy sources, and instead purchased them illegally. Eric's family strongly disagreed with these claims, believing there was more to the story, and urged investigators to explore other possibilities. Despite trying to move on, Corey faced significant challenges, according to her brother Ronnie, as the absence of their husband and father left a huge gap in their lives, leading their three sons to act out due to the uncertainty surrounding his death. Corey, grieving and seeking comfort for her children, turned to a creative outlet to cope with her emotions. She wrote and self-published a children's book on Amazon titled Are You With Me?, which aimed to help kids understand and deal with the loss of a loved one. The book tells the story of a young boy struggling to come to terms with his father's death through illustrations and narrative. In the book, Corey portrayed Eric, her late husband, as a protective angel always watching over their son. Her mother, Lisa, praised the book, saying it brought some comfort to Corey and her grandchildren as they navigated their emotions and rebuilt their lives. However, detectives investigating Eric's death soon uncovered evidence suggesting foul play. Just weeks after Corey appeared on local Utah news stations promoting her book and sharing her grief, she was arrested and charged with her husband's murder on May 8, 2023. The community was stunned by the arrest, and the tragic turn of events transformed what was initially a heartwarming story of a grieving wife and mother into an unbelievable tale of betrayal and tragedy. Corey is accused of murdering Eric by poisoning him. Eric's family believes Corey deliberately put a lethal dose of fentanyl in the Moscow Mule she made for him on the night he died. However, Corey's lawyer claims that no fentanyl was found in the glasses at their home. Corey denies any involvement in Eric's death, saying she had no reason to harm him. Her mother, Lisa, was shocked to hear about her daughter's alleged involvement and told investigators that the couple was happy and had no reason to kill each other. But as detectives dug deeper, they found that Corey and Eric's relationship was not as perfect as they seemed. The couple had disagreements, and Corey, who had given up her career to be a stay-at-home mom, wanted to be independent. She was also growing increasingly frustrated with Eric's frequent hunting trips. According to Lisa, Eric was unfaithful in his marriage, and he confided in her about the affair, along with Corey. To address their marital issues, Eric and Corey sought counseling. However, Eric's family denies that he ever cheated on her. Eric genuinely loved his sons and wanted to save the marriage. Despite his efforts, Eric was preparing for a potential divorce. He set up a secret trust with his sister Katie without revealing his intentions. The investigation uncovered that Eric had 6 life insurance policies worth $3 million. Furthermore, Corey forged Eric's signature on an additional $100,000 policy just 2 months before his death. It was also discovered that Corey allegedly stole money from Eric's personal accounts and misused business funds over several years. Contrary to her claims, Corey's house-flipping business was failing, according to Eric's family representative. Corey's company was deeply in debt, with millions of dollars owed. According to the spokesperson, Corey urgently needed cash, and a prenuptial agreement signed before the marriage stated that she would not inherit the business assets if they were to divorce. However, if Eric were to pass away before her during their marriage, the assets would transfer to Corey. The spokesperson's claims were disputed by Corey's attorney, who maintained that the business was not in financial trouble. The attorney explained that the debt was a normal part of the house-flipping business, as it relied on lines of credit that would be repaid once the properties were sold. Corey's attorney clarified that the large debt figure mentioned was simply a result of regular business transactions. Corey's mother, Lisa, recalled that Eric had been supportive of Corey's business ventures, particularly when they bought the mansion where they were celebrating on the night of his death. In Heber Valley, Utah, a 10-acre estate with a mansion sat vacant since its construction in 2017, despite being close to popular ski resorts and Deer Creek Reservoir. This prime location offered endless opportunities for outdoor recreation. Corey, with the help of investors, bought the mansion with plans to renovate and transform it into a recreational hub. Her goal was to sell the property at a significant profit. After consulting an accountant, Corey and Eric discovered that they could potentially make a $12 million profit from the sale of the property, a substantial return on the initial $3 million investment. However, there's a discrepancy in Eric's involvement. While he seemed to be on board with the purchase, his family claims he was against it and had a heated argument with Corey about buying the mansion. Eric's family spokesperson claims that Corey gave Eric a drink containing fentanyl on the night of his death, and they believe this was not Corey's first attempt to harm Eric. They allege that in 2019, during a trip to Greece, Eric became violently ill after Corey gave him a drink, but Corey's brother Ronnie denies this, saying Eric was mistakenly given an alcoholic drink by a bartender while taking antibiotics. Eric's family also claims that Corey tried to kill Eric again on Valentine's Day 2022, a month before his death, when she brought him a sandwich that caused him to break out in hives and struggle to breathe. After Eric's death, Corey's behavior was questioned, including an incident where she allegedly attacked her sister Amy when she tried to open a safe containing a large amount of cash. Corey claimed she was defending herself to retrieve important documents, but was charged with assault and pleaded no contest in June 2023. Corey appeared in court for a 4-hour bail hearing, during which her attorney tried to convince the judge to release her on bail. Prosecutors presented 3 witnesses and evidence to argue that Corey had poisoned her husband. One of the witnesses, a cell phone expert, testified about Google searches found on Corey's phone, including queries about retrieving deleted iPhone messages, FBI's ability to find deleted messages, and the lethal dose of fentanyl. However, Corey's attorney countered that these searches were conducted after her husband's death, as Corey sought answers to the accusations against her. The prosecution also questioned the lead detective about potential sources Curry might have used to obtain the drugs that killed Eric. According to the detective, a woman named Carmen Labba, who claimed to work as a cleaner for Corey's business and home, told investigators about a meeting that took place in early 2022. During a call, Corey asked Carmen to buy fentanyl pills for an investor with a back injury. Carmen, who had a history of drug-related crimes and was on probation, agreed to the request. She later told detectives that she purchased 15 to 30 fentanyl pills and met with Corey to exchange them for cash. This exchange happened on February 11, 2022, just 3 days before Valentine's Day. Around the same time, court documents suggest Corey tried to poison Eric with a sandwich. Carmen also told detectives that Corey contacted her again, looking for even stronger drugs. She said Corey paid her with a check this time. Specifically, Carmen claimed that Corey wrote her a check for $1,300 about a week after Eric's death. However, Corey's attorney questioned whether the check could have been payment for cleaning services instead, and the detective acknowledged that this was possible. Corey's lawyer tried to discredit Carmen by pointing out her criminal history, including 4 first-degree felonies, and suggesting that she might not be a trustworthy witness. The lawyer claimed that Carmen may have been coerced into saying she sold drugs to avoid a long prison sentence, as the detective allegedly told her she would face serious consequences if she didn't cooperate. The lawyer also asked if there was any physical evidence to prove Carmen had bought drugs. The detective admitted that they found no text messages showing Corey asking Carmen for drugs, and no witnesses came forward to confirm they had seen the exchange. At the bail hearing, Eric's sister spoke to the judge, expressing her family's distress over Eric's death, and their fear that if Corey was released on bail, he would cause them further pain. Eric's sister asked the judge to keep Corey in custody, and the judge accepted her request. Meanwhile, Corey's family was upset because Corey was not allowed to leave jail before her trial and would have to stay there. They believed that Corey's time in jail was affecting her mental and physical health. In 2023, something serious happened to Corey while she was taking medicine given to her by the jail officials. She had a seizure and was quickly taken to the hospital from the jail. While Corey was in jail, she claimed that the officials gave her the wrong medication, which caused her to experience adverse effects. Fortunately, she recovered after being treated at a hospital. During her hospital stay, jail officials found a handwritten, unsent letter in her cell. They filed it into court records, claiming it was a note from Corey to her mother. Prosecutors argued that this letter provided additional evidence of Corey's intentions and motivations. In November 2023, they requested a no-contact order to restrict Corey's access to her mother and brothers, mainly due to the letter. Prosecutors claimed that the letter was evidence of witness tampering. According to prosecutors, the letter instructed Corey's mother on how her brother Ronnie should testify in court. Specifically, Corey allegedly wanted Ronnie to claim that Eric had admitted to obtaining pain pills containing fentanyl from Mexico during his trip abroad. The letter also instructed Ronnie to obtain text messages from Eric discussing his drug use. Corey stressed the need to link Eric's Mexico activities to his alleged drug involvement. Despite this, she vehemently denied accusations that a letter was an attempt to tamper with witnesses, claiming it was a work of fiction she wrote as a fantasy story. The judge ruled in her favor, as the prosecution failed to prove witness tampering. Currently, Corey and Eric's family are fighting for custody of their 3 sons, who are living with one of Eric's relatives. Although Corey is in jail, she still gets to see her sons through twice-weekly video calls. While her family has not been allowed private visits with the children, they regularly attend their sports events and practices, which are open to the public. If convicted of poisoning her husband Eric with fentanyl, Corey faces a sentence of 25 years to life. Multiple civil lawsuits have been filed against Corey, all related to Eric's estate. A central issue in these cases is the custody of Eric's children. Eric's family thinks that Corey's family is motivated by a desire to control Eric's assets, as whoever gets custody of the children will also gain control of his money. Corey's trial is scheduled to start in 2025.